Order number 3, messages. 5, papers.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable Senators, we have 2 statements and standing order 53-1. One by the Senator for Marsabit County, Senator Mohamed Chute, and the second one by the Senator for Kisii County, Senator. Sorry. You can use the dispatch box.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Education regarding the implementation of the competency-based curriculum CBC. Mr. Speaker, the competency-based curriculum CBC was introduced to equip learners with practical skills for the 21st century. But its implementation has revealed significant challenges that have exacerbated inequalities in the education system in our country. Mr. Speaker, urban schools, well-resourced compared to rural and disadvantaged ones, has made it impossible to equate learning in our country. Mr. Speaker, the CBC's focus on projects, hands-on learning over core subjects, combined with the financial strains on the parents of these students. Most of the schools, Mr. Speaker, are usually under-resourced, has left many of the students unprepared for global competition, and it has deepened the education disparities within our communities. Mr. Speaker, in the statement, the committee should state the measures being taken by the ministry to address resource disparity between all our schools in affluent urban areas and those in the rural and disadvantaged areas. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, the committee should reevaluate the CBC framework and recommend measures to ensure that the new curriculum strikes a balance between competency development and the acquisition of essential practical and academic skills. Mr. Speaker, number 3, I would hope that the committee will outline any existing measures in place to support parents, especially those from the low-income backgrounds who face extreme financial strain due to the increasing demands for class projects and learning materials under the CBC. Mr. Speaker, number 4, I would hope the committee will conduct a robust awareness campaign to familiarize all stakeholders, including parents, teachers, and students, with the CBC requirements, assessment, and the necessary resources to ensure that this system is successfully implemented so that our children can have equitable access to education. Mr. Speaker, the committee should finally provide clear timelines for investment in infrastructure and provide an adequate learning period and times with materials for public schools, particularly those in the under-resourced areas and from the poor areas of our communities, so that we can then ensure that all the students in our country have equal opportunity to succeed under this new educational system. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me your time.
Thank you. In my list, honorable senators, you can tune out to change it to the supplementary on the paper. Yes. And in my paper, supplementary on the paper, I can see also the senator for Ram County has two statements. And also the senator for nominated Senator Gloria Oroba. So we defer those two statements. or 3 statements by the 2 senators. All, okay, let me give 2 members to make maybe 2-minute maybe remarks on this statement by Senator Onyonka. Senator Manzo.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with your kind permission, I had a pending matter, and I don't know whether I can address the House before clearing the matter. I had a pending matter yesterday. You remember there was a statement raised by Senator Cheregei, and it would not be proper for me, having been an experienced member, I am aware, before that matter is cleared, I cannot be able to address the House. There was an issue yesterday in relation to the Minister of Agriculture and the fake, the fake fertilizers, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, before I hand over...
Are you ready to substantiate?
Mr. Speaker, I was unable to meet the PS Agriculture this morning. I made an effort on the CS, and the answer I got from a telephone call to the CS was that he will call later, Mr. Speaker. So I did not collect the actual information, but the information I have as a member, as a senator from Makueni, the information I have is the fake fertilizer receivers in Makueni County have never been compensated, Mr. Speaker.
So are you aware that you should substantiate now? Because this is...
I'm aware of that fact, Mr. Speaker. I still stick with my position that the people of Makueni, they may have compensated other counties.
So
but the
are
people
you
of Makueni,
stating about Makueni people, or you are seeking
yesterday, I indicated...
lenience that you have not been able to get the materials to substantiate?
I am seeking the Speaker's lenience to be given more time so that I can access...
Then why are you not so
I
directed
can
to
access the PS for Agriculture and the CS
So for how long?
for valid information, Mr.
For
Speaker.
1 more day?
For 1 more day, Mr. Speaker. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chalge?
The new commissioner should start working very fast. Mr. Speaker, I want to support the statement by Senator Richard Onyonka. Mr. Speaker, I think this is the correct process of querying. I think what I can say, the CBC issue is a concern for all of us, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy that his kinsman, who is the CS Education, Migos, CS has said that by the end of this year, January, Mr. Speaker, 19,000 classrooms will be ready for grade 9. So, Speaker, and I want to advise Senator Onyonka to be consulting him because they are kinsmen. He doesn't need to bring it to the floor, of the House. Yet the President has given them a Minister of Education. They can finish around Keroga, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the point I wanted, that was on a light touch, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, continue. Minority Leader, Deputy Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, you should not allow Senator Cheragay to take that direction. That's why did you hear Senator Cheragay alluding, there can never be a light touch in a speech as important as the one that he's making. That the Minister for Education is first a Kisi and must be speaking to Kisis first before the Kisis can bring matters before this House, Mr. Speaker. What about those of us who have no cabinet secretaries that we can speak to? Who will address those national issues? CBC is not a Kisi issue. It's a national issue. And I'm very sure Senator Onyonka is not raising the matter on behalf of the people of Kisi.
Yes.
He's doing it for this country.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Dean. I think your statement is very much in order because I think the CS education is a national leader. He's just there to represent every Kenyan. And Senator Chalagay, you are seasoned lawmaker in this House.
Mr.
But
Speaker,
the statements
you know,
you are
Senator,
making nowadays are very substantive. What is happening?
Mr. Speaker, you know, Senator Onyonka is a friend of mine. He was telling me they normally fly back together with the CS of Education. And most of their conversation is in the local dialect. It was on a lighter touch, Mr. Speaker, but this is a serious and a substantive matter of national importance. I agree the issue of CBC is something that was born during Kibaki. Midwife now, it was born in Uru's time. President William Ruto is the one midwifing. And he's doing a good job in midwifing, Mr. Speaker. No one likes changes. Mr. Speaker, we are moving from into a competent space, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker. You know nowadays, under 844 system, Mr. Speaker, even people who underwent 844 could not make tea. Just to mix chai, Mr. Speaker, the tea leaves and milk and water. We want to build a system where you are giving people life skills, Mr. Speaker. You need to ensure that the curriculum competence-based, where grade 9, Mr. Speaker, are transiting. The president in the State of the Nation assured the nation
Senator
that
Chalege,
by
just a
January,
minute. There is a point of order from Senator
I was
Ososi.
on fire, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ososi.
Mr. Speaker, I had put on the point of order to make a comment on Senator Mahanzo's issue of...
Now, maybe I'll give you time to make your comment on...
Yeah, it's not very much related, but it's very substantial, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you are aware that I was asked to substantiate on the matter of Moi University. And I did substantiate in this House, provided all the evidence, and the Speaker ruled that he was going to issue a communication. Mr. Speaker, it's now getting into the third week. There is no communication on the ruling as to the evidence which I had provided on Moi University. Mr. Speaker, I want you to make a comment on that.
Senator
Now
Ososi.
that Senator Mahanzo was being pushed to substantiate under Standing Order number 105. What happened to my matter? Are we starting to deal with matters of this House administratively, or we are letting matters to be processed through this House, Mr. Speaker?
The matter you are raising, the communication from the Speaker is just between where I'm seated and the Speaker's office. So anytime that communication will be brought before this House. So, who is on the floor, Senator Karwale? And you know the procedures of points of order. Point of order or clarification you want? Yeah, just 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the issue raised by the Senator of Vihiga is very important. The only window left to the chair on such a ruling is for him to come and inform the House that upon verifying the documents that were submitted, he was either convinced or not convinced that the matter had been substantiated. And Mr. Speaker, the people of Kakamega are keenly following because they want to hear whether the matter has been substantiated. The moment it is, the people of Kakamega are going to court to sue the Senate for throwing out the Senator of Kakamega on that day when the Senator of Kakamega, Mr. Speaker, was protecting his younger brother and protecting the integrity of this House, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Boni Karwale, I clearly send the communication is between the Speaker's office and where I'm seated. Anytime that communication will be brought to this floor, I give a very clear guidance on this. So let's proceed. Senator Chalege, 1 minute to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I think we need to be, under your guidance, there should be point of relevancies. This is not somewhere in Avocolo where you are campaigning for Kakamega matters, Mr. Speaker. This is the House of national importance. When Mr. Speaker, those are irrelevancies, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chalege.
Mr. Speaker, this is not a bullfighting session. We are seriously conversing. No, I can't. Those are mundane issues, Mr. Speaker. You need to protect the integrity of this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion...
You're out of order. I can't see an intervention, and you know this House will not shout. For points of orders. You must
Mr.
catch
Speaker,
my eye through the.
But
the
I'm waiting for the, why are you harassing me? No, can
Can
you
you
focus
conclude?
on what I'm saying?
Next.
Mr. Speaker, I think, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, and you know Senator Sifuna should be patient with us. I know the
Senator
elections
Chelagay,
of
I don't think
ODM
you
may
have
be
any
stressing
other-
him, but Mr. Speaker, can you allow us to do our business here? Mr. Speaker, on the issue of CPC in conclusion, I want to support Senator Onyonga that the President assure the country that 16,000 classrooms will be ready for grade 9 in terms of transition on CPC, Mr. Speaker. As a House, we need to support the government in the rollout of CPC, Mr. Speaker. If anybody has a problem with CPC, bring policy or legislative intervention for the betterment of this country, Mr. Speaker. And that is the only way we will ensure this country moves forward in terms of education. Let us build skill and life-based, Mr. Speaker, so that our people can get value for education and quality education, not quantity education. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna Edwin.
Honorable Speaker, every day I continue to be a very proud SG of the ODM party, and especially the contribution of members of my party in discourse in this particular house. In fact, the statement by Senator Onyonka demonstrates that he understands that the issues to do with the curriculum-based, competence-based curriculum go beyond school infrastructure, and they go beyond issues of the teachers or the staffing of our classrooms. Honorable Speaker, this is the reason why in the morning today, I gave the President free advice that if there is anyone in this parliament that he needs to keep close, is a senator of Kisii, because he will guide him on some of these issues. Because you can see, Mr. Speaker, if you compare the statement that has been brought by the senator of Kisii and the President's address, it is clear that the senator of Kisii understands the depth of the issues that are bedeviling the CPC. The President took only 2 paragraphs to address the issue, and he only spoke about hiring extra teachers and building classrooms. The issue, as Onyonka has framed it, goes way beyond those 2 issues, Honorable Speaker. You will see that he has spoken about even measures in place to support parents. Here in Nairobi, many of our parents are complaining. Sometimes the kids come home with extremely complex assignments. And they also have an implication financially. You have to buy materials. Parents are being asked to buy printers and so on and so forth. So I wish that on that flight that Honorable, the member of, the senator from Nandi was talking about, if we could swap positions so that the current CS becomes the senator and the senator for Kisii becomes the CS, I think the President will benefit from the wisdom more that is coming from the senator of Kisii than from the current CS. Honorable Speaker, this is why we want to make it clear, Honorable Speaker, that you should avail yourself as the executive of all the talent that is available for you in this country so that you are helped. Because you can see some of the pronouncements from Senator for Nandi. They are not even helpful to the head of state. And I said in the morning, I feel very bad because the head of state is supposed to be benefiting from some of the wisdom that comes from this floor. But unfortunately, you are just here to praise him and to clap when you can see clearly that he did not even go into in-depth analysis of the problems of the CPC. As I said yesterday, he himself framed the question, are our policies in the education sector working? He never answered the question. It is not about classrooms. It is not about teachers. It is these issues raised here. And I hope that we can invite members of the executive when the committee of education is dealing with Senator Onyonka's statement to also imbibe in the wisdom that is coming from Kisii and the ODM party. Honorable Chair, I thank you.
Senator David Wakoli.
Honorable Speaker, when I wanted to say something, you stopped me from saying it, Honorable Speaker. And someone said, I don't know how to use buttons, Honorable Speaker. But I want to concur with Honorable Onyonka that as a teacher by profession, the ministry and the curriculum being implemented as a big problem. There are big gaps based on policy implementation, the curriculum itself, the training of teachers, the funding of the program. And definitely, Honorable Speaker, if we don't step in the gap now, our whole generation is going to limp in the dark. And it is important to take what Honorable Onyonka is talking about seriously, because we will be judged by the product we produce at the end of the system.
And as a teacher, it really pains me to be churning out students who are half-baked. They are not critical thinkers. They think in terms of regions. They have no sense of reality in them. And I want to correct my friend Cherargei by saying, I am an 844 product, Honorable Senator. And when you look at me, I am competent enough to milk my animals at home, to take care of my animals, to take care of my chicken, to make my own table and chairs, to spin my own pullover. And that tells you that all of us here are a product of 844. We are not here by fault or default. We are here by design. The system was efficient. That is why we are spewing wisdom and facts to this country. So allow us to shape the future and destiny of our children in the best way we know, and devoid of shenanigans and devoid. Yeah, noise making. And if this curriculum is going to entertain noise making, Honorable Speaker, then we'll rather go back to 844.
So, are you done?
If the policy, and I want to repeat, Honorable Speaker, these are signs of students who are present by sight and absent by ears. Honorable Speaker, as a teacher, he needs to call both parents so that we can guide these students. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Next, Honorable Clerk.
Order number 8, motion. Report of the Mediation Committee on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 38 of 2024.
There is a motion and order number 8. We are resuming the debate which was interrupted in the morning. And Senator Richard Onyonka, you have 8 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity again to continue with the debate we are having this morning. We were basically discussing the mediated version of the revenue bill. Mr. Speaker, I had actually nearly finished my conversation, but there were about 3 points I wanted to raise. And I wanted to plead with my colleagues in this House. Mr. Speaker, this country is not poor. For all intents and purposes, if you look at the budget we have, it is actually a budget that can run itself. The amount of money that county governments are getting, if you look at the total amount for the last 10 years, from the auditor, the controller budgets reports, and the Auditor General, the amount has been about 1.6 trillion shillings that has gone to the villages, Mr. Speaker, presumably. But during this time, this is when, again, the disease that we suffer from as a people, where we consider that personal success is really the driver behind the change that we need in Africa, or Kenya, a very successful, developed African country. The problem is the disease of stealing public money and the idea of getting friends to control the resources of this republic, and particularly the governors who have made it a habit of thinking that all Kenyans are stupid, and that is why they coordinate and organize their friends to do contracts, make sure that we have no medicines in the hospitals, whether this technocrat was a good officer or not, and then they bring their friends and relatives who then control the money that they're going to steal. I think, Mr. Speaker, you know cases of how many of our friends who actually came from very poor backgrounds. Mr. Speaker, there are candidates who have run for governor who are basically people who came from very humble backgrounds. And you would think that individuals who've been exposed to this kind of life of denial, a life of rejection, would pick this country up and put it together and make sure that we spend the resources we are supposed to try and change the trajectory of where this country is going to. Mr. Speaker, what do? Of course, then we take everything You find our hospitals don't have medicines. The roads are done poorly because then we find, even as I speak, Mr. Speaker, like in my county, Kisii, it is the Chinese companies that are doing roads when the locals have nothing. And then when governors are being told to pay the pending bills, what do, Mr. Speaker? They void more than 1,900 payments under the IFMI system. How can you void government payments 1,600 times? It means you are stealing. And then, Mr. Speaker, the EACC, which is the institution that is supposed to manage our bad manners and the stealing we are doing, they are all compromised and they keep complaining that I'm hitting at them. I hope the new director who comes is going to pick up his bootstraps and do something because, Mr. Speaker, our country is hemorrhaging. Governors need to know we are their friends. We are willing to add them more money. Members of Parliament must understand we don't want to take their kitties, but we are behaving badly. We are misspending state money. We are misspending the resources which we need to help our most vulnerable people, and we are behaving as if nothing is happening. Mr. Speaker, we have the capacity, but we refuse to accept our capabilities. I want to say that I hope that we will bring legislation with some of you members who have really been wonderful, so that we can close the loopholes where this money is being stolen from and where it's stolen through. And Mr. Speaker, I listened to the presidential speech the other day. How I wish he would have said we have at least 20 names of individuals that have already been arrested or we are arresting because they have stolen tons of money from our poor people. But we never listened to that because it's not important. We only react when the Gen Zs get to the streets. And we are saying, Mr. Speaker, like me, I am not anti-government. All these guys in government are my friends. We just want them to govern well. We want the governors to govern well. We want the people running football in Kenya to govern it well. We want people who are running Nairobi County to govern it well. That is all we want, Mr. Speaker. And I say thank you for giving me time to speak about this matter.
On my screen, I can see some of the senators who contributed in the morning, like Senator Chalagay. Did you contribute? You are? Senator Mwinyi Mohamed?
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika mimi kunipa fursa hii pia kuongeza kauli yangu kuunga mkono ripoti ya uwiano kuhusiana na sheria ya ugawaji wa pesa. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii ni mara ya pili tumeweza kuleta ripoti ya uwiano kuhusiana na masuala ya sheria ya ugawaji wa pesa kati ya serikali kuu na serikali za kaunti. Hapo awali Mheshimiwa Spika, tulileta uwiano ambapo tulikubaliana kwamba pesa ambazo zinastahili kwenda kwa kaunti ni shilingi bilioni 400.1. Mheshimiwa Spika, ripoti pia imesema kuwa tumeweza kukubaliana kwamba shilingi bilioni 387 ziende katika kaunti zetu. Na hii ilitokamana kwa sababu mswada wa fedha mwaka 2000. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna masuala ya alamu hapa na sijui kama yahusiana na Senate ama
Okay. Lea malizia.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Ilikuwa alamu inachamka hapa. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kuwa pesa zimepunguzwa tena mpaka shilingi bilioni 387 kwa sababu ya kuondolewa kwa mswada wa fedha wa mwaka 2024 kutokana na maandamano ya Gen Z na mambo mengine. Mheshimiwa Spika, la msingi hapa ni kuwa lazima pia kaunti zetu zijue kwamba fedha kutoka kwa serikali zinakwenda zikipungua. Japokuwa fedha zinaongezeka kwa kiwango, kwa mfano tumeongeza mwaka huu bilioni 2, lakini tukiangalia katika masuala ya asilimia, zile pesa ambazo zilitoka katika serikali kuu kuja kwa kaunti mwaka 2013 mpaka sasa zinateremka chini. Hii ya sasa nafikiri ni asilimia 13 ama 15 ambaye zile pesa ambazo kutoka mwanzo ziliweza kutolewa. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ipo haja ya kaunti zetu kujaribu kuingia mifukoni wao wenyewe, waokote zile pesa ambazo wanatakana kuokota. Kama ni masuala ya kuleta mifumo ya kiteknolojia ya kuweza kukusanya pesa, ifanyike hivyo, ili pesa zinazokusanywa katika kaunti, Mheshimiwa Spika, ziwe zinajulikana na vile vile pia zinatumika kwa yale matumizi ambayo yatasaidia maendeleo katika kaunti zetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, haiwezekani mpaka hivi sasa kaunti nyingine bado zinaokota pesa kwa mkono. Mtu anatoka asubuhi na vitabu 10, akiregesha labda vitabu 2, pesa ambazo amekusanya hazijulikani na wala hazifanyiwi hisabu na haziingii katika hesabu za auditor mwisho wa mwaka. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, lazima katika ile tunaita on source revenue, kaunti zetu lazima zijitahidi ili ziweze kukusanya hizi pesa. Tukiangalia kama kaunti ya Nairobi, Mheshimiwa Spika, yatarajiwa kukusanya zaidi ya bilioni 60, lakini mpaka sasa wako katika bilioni 12, 13. Mombasa wana uwezo wa kukusanya bilioni 10, lakini mpaka sasa tuko katika bilioni 5, nusu ya uwezo wake, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo ipo haja, Mheshimiwa Spika, kaunti zetu sio kila mwaka wapige kelele pesa zinazokuja kutoka serikali kuu ni kidogo. Wao wenyewe wanafanya nini katika kukusanya hizi fedha? Hizi pesa zikishafika kwao wanafanya nini kuleta maendeleo, Mheshimiwa Spika? Tukiangalia hospitali hazina madaktari wa kutosha, wafanyaji kazi wa kutosha, katika masoko pia hakuna. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ni lazima kaunti zetu pia zijitahidi, isiwe kwamba lawama kila siku zinakwenda kwa serikali. Ndio lazima tulaumu serikali kuu kwa sababu wao ndio wenye mfuko mkubwa, lakini kaunti zetu pia lazima zijitahidi. Kwa hiyo mengi, Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono ripoti hii.
Thank you, Senator Faki. Honorable Senators, Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's gallery this afternoon, a visiting delegation from the Unite Parliamentary Networks for Global Health and UNITAD. The delegation is taking a courtesy call to the Senate to discuss how Unite can continue to collaborate with and support Kenyan legislators as global champions. Honorable Senators, I request that each member of the delegation rises when called so that they may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. 1, Ambassador Gunnar Andreas Holm, Norwegian Ambassador to Kenya. Mr. Abdukalim Ibrahim, Africa Regional Coordinator, United Parliamentarians Network for Global Health. Mr. Cynthia Oliveira Dantas, Partnerships and Resource Mobilization Officer, UNITAD. Mr. Matthew Black, Country Engagement Manager, UNITAD. Mr. Chico Sanguila, Program Officer, UNITAD. Mr. Rui Dagama, Interim Board Member. Honorable Ndenita Gati, former member, National Assembly of Kenya. Oh, yeah. Ndenita, I served with her in the tour of the Parliament. Karibu Senate. Honorable Sevinok Stentrand, Member of Parliament, Norway. Honorable Federica Onoli, Member of Parliament, Italy. And Honorable Jean Francois Baye, former Member of Parliament, France. And this great team is accompanied by partners of United Parliamentary Networks for Global Health and UNITAD, who are actually 13 numbers. We recognize your presence in the Senate. So, Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation and wish them a productive visit and fruitful discussions on the vital work of advancing global health, particularly in collaboration with the Kenyan lawmakers. I thank you. I want to invite Senator Sifuna Edwin in a minute or so to welcome the visitors. And then
Honorable Speaker, thank you.
Senator Minda Kibuano is a member of the team.
Thank you. Members of this House should always allow us to provide important context. So when I point out that the Honorable Denita Gatti was nominated by ODM, it is not something that should be frowned upon. This is information that should help you, and we are very proud of her work. It's not about division. It's as SG of ODM, surely, Speaker, I'm allowed to take pride in my membership and the work that they're doing. So, Honorable Speaker,
No, I'll
on
give
behalf,
you. I'll give you.
on behalf of the minority side that sit on your right as a delegation, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you into this House. As you can probably tell, there are a few hecklers around and we have to contend with them. But we will do our best to be able to express ourselves when we are standing here. It is a very difficult environment. I am being alerted, Honorable Speaker, to the presence of the Honorable Mark Nyamita, the Member of Parliament for Uriri, elected on ODM party. So, Honorable Chair, when I bring up these facts, it's not to despise anybody. Everybody should be proud of their political parties. If you're having wrangles in your home, don't begrudge us who are happy in our house, Honorable Speaker. So I take this opportunity to welcome you.
Welcome the guests, and that will be enough.
I take this opportunity to welcome the entire delegation to this House, and I am sure that the members that I have mentioned, specifically the two members, Honorable Denita and Honorable Mark Nyamita, will be able to treat the members of the entire delegation in the fashion in which we have directed as a party when we are hosting guests. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Aminda Kibwana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I'm going to echo my SG. I want to appreciate, Mr. Speaker, for you to formally at least invite Unite team. I am a proud member of Unite Health team, and I sit on the steering committee. Mr. Speaker, just give me a second for me to highlight on what Unite focuses on. The key focus areas include universal healthcare, the intersection of public health and human rights, gender equity in health, and sustainable responses of emerging health crises. Unite are policymakers, academics, and civil society. Unite amplifies voice of parliamentarians to advance global health and ensures inclusive, effective governance, Mr. Speaker. And one of the Unite's meaningful step is to strengthen partnership across the region. Notably, the chapter initiated a collaboration with the University of Health and Allied Science in Ghana, and right now they're in Kenya trying to collaborate and work with us to develop an academic program and also global campaigns and public health awareness, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to thank Abdul Karim Ibrahim, who is the African Regional Unite Parliamentarians Network, for bringing us together. I was actually appointed. I was only done an interview, and within one day, I was already sitting in the steering committee of the Unite. I take my pride. Unite has taken me places, has initiated for me to go to different countries. The other day, I was appointed to go to Berlin to sit as a panelist in one of the health. It was seriously, I can't remember. That was during the time that we were going through impeachment, so I was unable to attend. But I take pride and I welcome them. I welcome also the members of parliament from different countries. I tell them Kenya is a beautiful country, and as much as you may see our debate here, they are quite healthy, and at the end of the day, we remain very good friends from both opposition and government side. So I really want to welcome you. And I say, I'm sure you have enjoyed and, of course, benchmarked all the other places that you have been to, Makueni, Kenyatta Hospital, and the rest of the place. Now I know you're going to the National Assembly, but I want to tell you that Kenya is the place to be, and Kenya is a country to engage with. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I will also give the majority leader a minute also to welcome this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now that is a welcoming remark. You know, Speaker, as a father of this House, you should know the trade of all your children. There are some for welcoming guests, and there are others for other duties. Senator Sifuna is for other duties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in welcoming this gracious team. I have listened to the resume of the work that they do, and I am particularly impressed in their pursuit of global health, Mr. Speaker, particularly at this time in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, where we are having a conversation about UHC, Universal Health Cover, and it will be important to listen to them on their conversations of what Kenya can actually do better. This is in the second month of the rollout of UHC. After this House, Mr. Speaker, passed 4 signature bills that have anchored perhaps the most consequential national program to ever been rolled out since Kenya became a republic. This is his second month, Mr. Speaker. And of course, like any new venture, we are experiencing, Mr. Speaker, challenges left, right, and center, but there are good stories to write home about. I want to believe, Mr. Speaker, that from their visit to our various hospitals, particularly Kenyatta National Hospitals, there are many things that they have pointed out and would wish that either as a government or as a people of Kenya, we could do better. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, it will be good to hear from them because they sit at the global level. What are their perspectives in comparison to other jurisdictions globally, especially countries that have tried to roll out UHC, Mr. Speaker? What is it that what are the lessons that have been learned, and what is a place in which Kenya can ensure that this program actually succeeds, because it will be life-changing to the ordinary citizens, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I hope that, because I've heard from Senator Hamida that after this they are going to the National Assembly, should an opportunity be granted, it will be good to listen to them, particularly our own members who serve in the Health Committee. I know the chairperson of Health Committee is with us, so that as they provide oversight, they could benefit from that perspective of these friends of ours. I do welcome them, and I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Majority Leader. And the team is also, we have 2 members from our sister house, Honorable Mark Nyamita. I want to recognize your presence, and Honorable Daniel Molokere, member of National Assembly. I don't know whether he is also around. After Majority Leader, at 4 p.m., I'll be receiving this delegation on behalf of the Speaker of the Senate. And I really want to welcome the Senate Committee, Standing Committee on Health, so that they can accompany me in that discussion, so that we can see what the best we can tap from the orange. So the chair is not here, but I saw the vice chair. So Senator Homal, kindly join in room 4, committee room 4 upstairs, for that meeting at 4 p.m. Now we go to Senator Abbas Sheikh Mohammed. We are back to the motion. You want to contribute? Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also want to join my colleagues to support the DORA bill, the Division of Revenue. Honorable Speaker, I want first to commend the Committee of Mediation for the good work they have done. However, I have concerns that, Honorable Speaker, we expected more money than what we have been given. The 2 billion shillings actually is not enough to take care of the county's interest, because at most they will get something like for 2 million shillings each. And there's so much to, this country, the larger population is actually the counties. Most of the Kenyans are receiving services from the counties. What we have at the national level is actually policy issues. But of course, the actual work, all the social economic issues are supposed to take place in the counties. And the way the counties actually funds is being treated is actually so, they've been very hurting. That every time when there's a budget to be made, there's issues of mediations and all these things. And I think we need to look into this issue and look into the bills, the acts that governs these issues, and this should be done once and for all. I also suggest that all funds, starting, I mean, all preparation of budget bills, the making of the county bills, the county financial issues shall first come through the Senate. And it's only after that that we can be able to take these things to the National Assembly so that they can be able to allocate the necessary bills. Honorable Speaker, this business of delaying the appropriation of the bills, the approval of the bills of finance is actually causing a lot of delay. Counties are paying a lot of wage bills. They are paying to services, medical services, issues. They are paying for other services like water. And the more we keep delaying, the counties actually are incurring a lot of things, a lot of pending bills. And they have inherited already some pending bills that need to be paid. Some of them have actually been taken to court of late. One other thing is actually we need to be strictly following the law. That the 15%, every time the counties are not even getting the 15%, they get less than the 15%. Honorable Speaker, one other thing is that despite the seepage taking place in the counties, the corruption in the counties is not only in the counties. Corruption is actually everywhere in this country. In every institution, corruption is there. So it's a high time that we shall be able to institute a very serious measures against the corrupt people who are actually trying to steal money, steal properties of public properties, and therefore it's always I hear, the county has a lot of corruption, but the corruption has emanated from high levels, and therefore the best thing is, and I said many times, we need to strengthen our institutions to oversight. For the other institutions like the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Senate, and the DPP, the OPP, the DICs, these people should be strengthened. So at least we will be able to cap this business of stealing money left and right. One other thing, Honorable Speaker, I think the Senate should also take its own responsibilities to do a proper oversight. But the problem is that you bring somebody, a governor, to bring the committees, the money is not even adding up. But honestly, from there, the Senate has no authority. And therefore, I think we need also to review those oversight roles for the Senate. With those few remarks, I support the bill, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Julius Mulgo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also add my voice to those of my colleagues. This issue of division of revenue is something that is a big debate between the houses, and big debate in the minds of many because of what they see happening on the ground. Stealing is rather very rampant and very open these days in the counties, making devolution be on a questionable state in the minds of many, because the expectation that the citizens have or had on devolution, knowing that money is coming to the counties from the national treasury, and also collection of revenue in addition to the national funding would really be something that would change a lot of situations on the ground. But stealing or corruption that is practiced by governors and those operatives in the counties are just making it, putting devolution in such a state that is being questioned a lot. And now a lot of empowering of personal friends, empowering of relatives into the cake of the county is very open and rampant, such that even the citizens and the county people are just losing hope, and they're just looking at it as being the business of the governor and his people. And then there is also a lot of biasness in employment and placements that is being practiced by government, such that the citizens in counties are losing hope because it is like this is a private company by government, and therefore the citizens are kind of losing hope, and the expectations that they had were are really being discouraged, and they are losing a lot of faith in the governor and team that is in the county. And then also, when it comes to companies that are working on roads and in buildings and many other activities that are going on in the counties, you find that the governors are paying companies that are associated to them, either companies of relatives or their own companies, that they register in names that are not obviously showing that they are the owners or the ones running them. And those companies become the ones that are priority when it comes to payments. They first pay themselves. And they are not few companies. They are not one or two or three. They are 20s and 50s and 100s and even up to 300 for some of the places. And so this just drains whatever money that there is for bills that are supposed to be paid and spread to other companies, so that there is spreading of money and there is also circulation of money among other companies, and therefore, at the end of the day, among many other maybe people that run businesses here and there, because if the money is spread, everybody will benefit. There will be people that will buy vegetable, there will be people that will buy sugar, there will be people that will pay others for working on their lands and working on their settings here and there. And therefore, a county becomes a county that, money is spreading to everybody. But this is not happening because companies are just made, or payments are made to those companies that are associated with the governors. And also running counties like it is their own private companies, because people are just intimidated so that the governor is not criticized, or those who are working with the governor become lords and become people that are pushing authority over the people, and the people are cowed because this is a person that is working with the governor, and this is the governor, and therefore they just make the governing of the county become like a private company that belongs to an individual or certain individual, and therefore become untouchable. Revenue collection is also not up to where it's supposed to be in most of our counties, because there is a lot of stealing. If the boss is stealing, And those who are collecting the revenue know that, this belongs to the boss, and therefore they will go ahead and help themselves and steal from the first stage of collection. And therefore, at the end of the day, everybody will steal it because they have seen the governor stealing it. So that leaves development in a devastating situation. You talk of roads that are impassable in most of the places, and you talk of health that is really frustrated. The doctors and the nurses and everybody that is supposed to be working and contributing to a well-running of health facilities and health activities are just disappointed, they are discouraged and demoralized. So that brings down the levels of services of health, and therefore a lot of people are losing lives, and situations that would be helped health-wise are just running out of hand because the governors are not running the hospitals like they should, so that it helps the people. And then also something that governors are running away, or counties are running away from ECDE, which is devolved, and it is the work of the governors, but they are making them or treating them like they don't belong there. They're just like orphans in somebody's home whose children are there, and therefore looking at these orphans with an unfair eye. And so ECDE really don't know where they belong. They don't know where they are supposed to be because the governors are not treating them with regard, with the treatment they should be receiving, because that is where they belong. And therefore, something really needs to happen so that the counties are made to be responsible for ECDE. And then governors allege that they are not paid, there is no funding. That may be true in some of the months, but not all the months, because the CS Finance reported recently that funding has come up to October, and therefore what is owed to the counties is this month of November. And therefore there should be change, there should be movements because funding is already there or has been happening, and therefore activities that are supposed to be on and active should be on, but the government are in denial. But as they do that, they are busy building and buying for their own selves. And those of their people, relatives, and so on are busy buying and building houses and homes. So you find that the towns that are near where the governors are, a lot of activities for the governor are going on. Like the governor of Machakos is busy in Nairobi or in Mombasa. The one of Mombasa is busy somewhere, building somewhere and buying land, and yet they are telling the citizens and everybody else that there is no money, there is no funding coming to them. So our position as senators of oversight should really be strengthened, and that is needing funding so that we are actively doing our work of oversight. And then something should be done about even these people of EACC, because some of the agents sent to counties are busy collecting money because these governors and their people are bribing EACC people, and therefore they're just busy because these days they carry money, cash in their vehicles to give to these guys. So as they chase them around, they're just busy collecting money. And therefore, auditing reports should be strengthened very much, and people should go to jails so that it becomes a lesson to the others. I support.
Senator David Wakoli.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa nafasi hii kuchangia kuhusiana na mkataba ama makubaliano kati ya jumba la Senate na jumba la kitaifa la wabunge, hususan fedha ambao unaenda kuafiki maendeleo katika nchi ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, siku zilizopita maseneta wamekuwa wakijihusisha na mchakato wa kutia kwenye mizani utekelezaji wa kazi ama maendeleo katika kaunti mbalimbali katika kamati mbalimbali. Na baadhi ya magavana waliokuwa wanakuja, wengine walikuwa wangwana wakikubali makosa, wengine wakikana makosa, na sisi tukiwakosoa. Fauka ya hayo, kuna wale ambao walikuwa wana viburi, wana vichwa butu, ambao walikuwa wanadhani na wanasema kwamba hakuna chochote ambacho jumba la Senate linawasaidia. Lakini nashukuru maseneta ambao walisimama kidete na kusema kwamba fedha zinazoenda katika kaunti zetu zisipungue chini ya bilioni 400. Na shinikizo ama ukosefu wa pesa katika kaunti uliwalazimu magavana kukubali kwamba jumba la Senate lipo na litakuwepo na litaendelea kuwepo kutetea fedha zinazoenda katika kaunti na vile vile kuchunga maslahi ya kaunti zetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, linalosababisha ninyanyuke na kutoa hoja zangu ni kwamba kaunti ya Bungoma ni mojawapo ya kaunti ambazo zimekuwa na fedha chache, na gavana amekuwa anasema kwamba hana fedha za kutekeleza miradi ya maendeleo. Ni sawa, lakini fedha sasa tumemaliza shida iliyokuwepo ya kukubaliana. Mimi nataraji kwamba katika mashinani kule Bungoma, maeneo ya mazoezi ya wanariadha kule Mlima Elgon itakamilika. Mheshimiwa Spika, imechukua zaidi ya miaka 10 eneo hilo kujengwa, na fedha ambazo Bungoma imepata kufikia sasa ni zaidi ya bilioni 36. Mheshimiwa Spika, kile jumba la Senate linapaswa kujiuliza, miradi ambayo magavana wanajihusisha nayo ni miradi ambayo wanaweza kumaliza katika awamu yao ya uongozi, ama ni miradi ambayo kwayo watapata kipato cha kiuna mgongo na waachie magavana wanaokuja shida na madeni jinsi tunaona katika Kenya hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia katika sekta ya afya, Mheshimiwa Spika, kule Bungoma hospitali hazina madawa, kule Bungoma kuna hospitali miundombinu na mijengo haijakamilika, na ni mijengo ambayo imesambazwa ama imepokewa kutoka kwa magavana waliokuwepo. Kile tunadai sasa, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kuona magavana wakijenga na kukamilisha miradi ya maendeleo ambayo ipo sasa. Hatutaki kuona magofu ya miradi katika kaunti zetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, sekta ya ukulima, Mheshimiwa Spika, vile vile imeathirika pakubwa na utepetevu wa baadhi ya mawaziri na magavana katika Kenya hii. Kile tunasema pesa tumekubaliana, tunawapa, lakini uwajibikaji ni lazima udhihirike na uonekane kadamnasi ya umma. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, nimekubali kwamba yale walikubaliana bunge la Senate na la kitaifa. Sekta ya barabara, Mheshimiwa Spika, nimeleta hoja katika kamati ya barabara na miundo msingi, Mheshimiwa Spika, sasa miezi 6-7. Mheshimiwa Spika, juzi watu Bungoma wamedai kuna barabara ya foleni 2-3 ambayo imejengwa na baadhi ya maseneta wanajua. Fedha zimetoka katika awamu iliyopita. Badala ya kumaliza barabara, Mheshimiwa Spika, wamechukua rangi wameanza kupaka barabara. Mimi naomba kamati ambazo zipo hapa zisiwe kamati za kuimbia magavana nyimbo kama watoto wa chekechea, Lazima magavana wajibike na kazi ionekane imetendeka na malipo yanayotolewa yaonekane yametolewa kwa haki, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na mimi nataraji kwamba tunaposonga mbele, Mheshimiwa Spika, tutaweza kupewa nguvu na uwezo unaostahili, kwa sababu hata sisi maseneta tumekuwa kama makachero katika benki kuu ya nchi ya Kenya, ambao kile tunacho ni Biblia na rozari, Mheshimiwa Spika. Tukiwaona wezi, Mheshimiwa Spika, tunasema kama Mungu alipanga iwe na iwe. Mheshimiwa, hafla kama hiyo ama maombi kama haya hayapaswi kuwa ya maseneta, Mheshimiwa Spika. Sisi inatakana tukiona mwizi, tukiona nia yake, tunapambana naye mapema, Mheshimiwa Spika. Sasa mimi naomba kwamba tunapomaliza mchakato huu, fedha ziende sambamba katika kaunti zetu, na sisi tuandame hizo fedha, tuhakikishe zinafanya kazi, tuhakikishe magavana wanafanya kazi, tuhakikishe wanakandarasi mashinani wanapewa nafasi, tuhakikishe watoto wetu wanapewa kazi pasipo kubaguliwa jinsi inaonekana, Mheshimiwa Spika. Nataka tunapoenda msimu wa Krismasi tuone mabadiliko. Tuone Kenya ina msisimko mpya na ari mpya, kwamba hatutakuwa na utamaushi, bali tutakuwa na maono, tutakuwa na nishati na vision nzuri ambayo itatusukuma kwa mwaka unaokuja na mwaka ambao utakuwa na mapenzi, tutakuwa na umoja na mustakabali wa nchi ya Kenya. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono matokeo ama makubaliano ya kamati zote za bunge la Senate na bunge la kitaifa. Asante sana.
Senator Dulo Aldan Fatuma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this report, although with a very heavy heart. And why I'm saying this is because of what I see in my county and many other counties are doing in the committees I sit. Mr. Speaker, we sit here every year. We fight for counties to get budget allocation. And I have been in this house, this is my third time. Some of the senators who have passed through this house, they are those who have even sacrificed their lives in the last Senate, where they have been threatened by the government, where they have been arrested just simply because of supporting a certain position in the House as far as a third generation formula is concerned. Mr. Speaker, according to what I'm seeing in my county, it's like Kenyans don't know the role of senators. Because when you comment or maybe carry out your oversight, people ask you, what have you put on the table as far as development is concerned? Why have you not given us bursaries? And yet, we sit in this house, fight with national government, fight with National Assembly, fight with CRA to make sure that counties get budget allocation. And I think Senate needs to have a lot of sensitization as far as our role is concerned in many counties, because they don't seem to understand why they have elected their senators. Mr. Speaker, why I'm saying I'm supporting this motion with a heavy heart is because of the kind of practice I'm seeing in my county. And even before this house, Mr. Speaker, we push for money, governors refuse accountability. Oh, there is no that. We cannot be able to run our activities, And when they have the money, they don't even carry out those activities. Mr. Speaker, I have actually really wondered why Senate is there. Because we have a rogue governor in house who refuses to honor summonses, who cherry picks which committee he should appear before and which committee he doesn't appear before. He has actually taken 2 committees of the House to court. We wonder, He's the one who will sit or maybe shout in the county that he has not received budget. Mr. Speaker, we have institutions apart from Senate that is supposed to hold these governors accountable. But they are not doing what they are required to do by law. Mr. Speaker, as far as Governor for Isiolo is concerned, we need direction from your chair, because before they appeared before Cohesion, he actually praised the committee and said, this is the best committee of this house. And the rest are not committees that he should appear before. If I may go to health, Mr. Speaker, most of our hospitals, they don't have drugs. Been working for the life. Refuses to honor some go when such things happen. We must have a solution to it. We cannot just sit here and pass budget when people refuse accountability. We cannot sit here, and I think some of our colleagues, we must hold them accountable, because there are some of them who are entertaining these governors who are wrong. And when they are abusing senators, they are abusing the whole Senate, not individuals, Mr. Speaker. Look at the area of roads. There are no roads. The other day in my county, people are unable to bury the dead one because the roads are not there. They're not passable. Counties don't have qualified individuals who can actually supervise and monitor those roads. Money is dished out to individuals who are politically correct. And yet the roads are not done, Mr. Speaker. In their reports, they will say that we have done ABCD roads. And when you go on the ground, those roads are not there. What is the role of the Auditor General? What is the role of other institutions? Those are questions we need to ask ourselves. I mean, really, this is 21st century. We always keep on crying, this is not happening, that is not happening. Water, a lot of money is allocated. But we'll find that in some areas where I come from, our mothers are still carrying jerrycans on their back 400 kilometers with their donkeys. They can stay even for 2 days without water. And yet there is budget allocated, Mr. Speaker. There are some who do even double allocation on budget, where donors have actually sunk boreholes or provided water. And nobody is holding them accountable, Mr. Speaker. Revenue. You will see, Mr. Speaker, most of the counties, they are still on manual. Intentionally, governors have refused to have automated their revenue. It's going into people's pocket. We cry here, we don't have money. We fight with National Assembly every time that they should increase budget allocation when county is refusing to automate their revenue collection. And that is what should have actually supplemented the national budget allocation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are counties where you can imagine wage bill. For a county like Isiolo, the wage bill is at 50 right now, and they keep on actually recruiting people. Mr. Speaker, it's very sad when a county submits a report that is doctored, that is tampered with before a committee, and the committee sits there and praises that particular report. Isiolo County Governor recruited 42 advisors. When I appeared before the Committee of Cohesion, Mr. Speaker, you can imagine he redesignated them, he backdated the dates of their appointment, he backdated the date of their birth, and I have that copy of that report which I can table before this House, Mr. Speaker. And we have institutions that can countercheck that. Somebody who has been appointed as an advisor, who has never been to school, he's earning a salary of 200,000. He has only an ID to himself, Mr. Speaker. Yet we have our kids who are graduate, who are PhD holders, who are master's holders, jobless. And that one salary that is given to one individual who has retired, Mr. Speaker, could have employed 2, 3 graduates in our counties, Mr. Speaker. And somebody has audacity to say that I know everybody in this government and nobody will take me anywhere. Very sad. We have individuals recruited in Isiolo County as far as from Mombasa running their businesses. In all the counties, you will see over 80 staff who are ghost workers, Mr. Speaker. And I can provide the list on the table of the Senate. And nobody is taking action, Mr. Speaker. The law says wage bill should not go above 35%. No county in this country, Mr. Speaker, today has wage bill that is below or is 35. No county, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me not pour a lot of the challenges I face in my county and many counties that I've actually seen, because you will see even the Auditor General's report. In some of the counties, Auditor General report does not capture development projects where millions and billions are losing, Mr. Speaker. We're losing a lot of money. The report of Auditor General will cover allocation to COG, allocation to CAF. When you can imagine, if you check a particular county, they are losing a lot of money, Mr. Speaker. We have projects that have stalled. Nobody is holding those governors accountable for those projects. National government projects are also, some of them, they have stalled. Sometimes nobody even knows what is happening with those projects. We must put our acts together, Mr. Speaker. ECD is a responsibility of county government, Mr. Speaker. This afternoon, there was a teacher from Isiolo who called me, and she told me, in their pay slip, they are being called clerical officers when they are teachers. Mr. Speaker, the title they are given by the county is they are clerical officers. Their salary is actually, the NHIF is deducted, loan is deducted, the subscription to certain institutions are deducted, but it's not remitted. And today they cannot walk to any financial institutions to get any loan. Some of them, their facilities, or rather their properties, are auctioned, Mr. Speaker. We keep on recruiting ECD teachers just to satisfy our political ambitions. And the teachers don't even have classes. I know there are so many schools in my county where kids are still learning under trees. This century, trees, where a classroom can be built even with 1.5 million. When a county like Isiolo is actually receiving 5.6 billion almost per year. It's very sad. The school feeding program that is allocated to them is supplemented for something else. And these are kids who cannot afford even one meal in their homes. And that is the purpose of school feeding program, where they encourage those kids to come to schools. Mr. Speaker, counties are supposed to establish legislations that govern certain funds, PWD funds, youth funds, and women funds. Most of those counties, they have not actually operationalized those funds. And yet, they keep on utilizing money for those purposes. And nobody is holding them accountable. Like for Northern Kenya, a lot of money is spent under emergency and special program, Mr. Speaker. Millions and millions of money in the name of drought, in the name of emergency, and that money is not helping anybody. If there is a drought, maybe they provide 1 or 2 lorries of maize meal. That will cost 200, 300 million. Nobody looks into it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we need to bring on board those institutions that are supposed to hold those governors or the counties accountable. It's unacceptable. This is almost 13 years in devolution. We have nothing to show for. And some of the counties, I think we are better off when we were in the national government or under the national government, Mr. Speaker. I will support because of the interest of my people. But if it were for these governors who are actually playing rogue, corrupt, I would not have supported. I thank you.
Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's gallery this afternoon, 8 officers from the county assemblies of Wajir and Garissa. The officers are undertaking a capacity building program on coaching and mentoring in leadership at the Center of Parliamentary Studies, CPST, County House Campus. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Senator Mungatana. And 1 minute to welcome the visitors from Garissa and Wajir counties.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to welcome the visitors. Mr. Speaker, I want to particularly welcome the visitors from Garissa, who are our good neighbors on the other side of the county of Tana River. We also welcome the other visitors who have come. Mr. Speaker, I know that when they go to the CPST, they learn a lot. There's a lot of capacity building in that college. And we believe, Mr. Speaker, that the time that they will spend here in Nairobi with us, they will come back better leaders and more equipped to serve the specific counties where they come from. Mr. Speaker, I welcome them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So I'm back to the motion. Last but not the least, Senator Wambua Enoch.
So, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity to also add my voice to the report of the Mediation Committee. As a Speaker, I have followed very keenly on contributions that have been made by my colleagues. I've also taken time to peruse the report. Speaker, it is true that we are living in difficult times economically. That we must acknowledge, all of us. And that, as a Speaker, it is also true that our counties are seriously suffering. That there are services that are being rendered in counties and for which there is no money to pay. Business people, Mr. Speaker, in the counties are counting their losses. Employees, staff in the counties are also suffering. Some counties, Mr. Speaker, have actually almost ground to a halt. So, Mr. Speaker, it is in the context of that background that we are debating this recommendation by the Mediation Committee to agree on a figure that, in the wisdom of the committee, because we gave the committee the mandate, then the figure in their own wisdom then is reasonable. Mr. Speaker, allow me to say a few things before I make a declaration on my position on whether I'll support or I don't support. One, Speaker, as we debate this report, it shall be remembered that our counties, most of them, have actually come under the capture of sitting governors. That governors have actually become the stumbling block for success and progress in their own devolved units. I say this, Mr. Speaker, because having listened carefully to what almost every senator said, there is a common denominator when it comes to the behavior and accountability of a majority of the governors in this country. So, Speaker, it should be remembered, and this is for members to take note, that in fact it is the business of Parliament to share revenue amongst the two levels of government, the national government and the county governments. And that, Mr. Speaker, that the decision of Parliament on how that money is shared must never be influenced by the plans of the national government, the aspirations of the national government. It must be a very objective decision made by Parliament, because both governments belong to this country. I want to say two things, Mr. Speaker, about the utilization of this money that we want to devolve to our counties, especially in the health sector. We all agree that health is a devolved function. But, Mr. Speaker, I don't know of any county, and I stand to be corrected, Mr. Speaker, I don't know of any county that can stand here and say that their health sector is in good shape. I don't know of any county. At least I can speak for my county. I can speak for counties in my region. So, Speaker, health has become a major, major challenge to counties and county governments. From basic lack of infrastructure, even for health facilities, to drugs, to equipment, to personnel. Mr. Speaker, I will be recommending, as a senator of Kitui, that there will be need for a national conversation around the mess in the health sector. I say that, Mr. Speaker, because everybody aspires to achieve UHC, universal health coverage. And it's a beautiful thing. Everybody wants us to get there. But, Mr. Speaker, truth be told, if we don't fix the basics, then this talk about UHC is just empty talk. We must have the courage, Mr. Speaker, to ask ourselves, what exactly is the problem with our health sector in all counties in this country, and even at the national level? The Speaker, access to affordable health care, to me, where I sit, is actually a basic human right. A right that must be afforded every Kenyan in every corner of this country. And so, Mr. Speaker, even as we debate the money that we are going to be devolving to our counties, it will be important to also, as a Senate and as individual senators, to scrutinize the percentage of county budgets that goes into healthcare. And do this in liaison with our respective county assemblies. Mr. Speaker, this is important. And I was having a conversation with a neighboring county to Kitui, and the governor from that county said something that was very, very profound, Mr. Speaker. That if healthcare collapses in one county, then the ripple effect is felt in all the other frontline counties. Because the Speaker, you know, you and I share a border. If Meru health sector is dysfunctional, then the effects of that dysfunction will be felt in Tharaka Nithi, it will be felt in Kitui, it will be felt in Embu. The Speaker, concerted efforts must be made to ensure the success of the health sector in our counties. And there is no magic to it, Mr. Speaker. The only way of doing this is to make sure that governors and their governments allocate sufficient resources, and those resources are properly used to roll out programs in the health sector. The Speaker, the other matter that I want to talk about is just a general pilferage of resources, county resources. The outright disregard to accounting procedures in most of our counties. The Speaker, I have had a senator here lamenting twice, but maybe 3 times, that their governor or their government caused to be voided if mistransactions 1,600 times. The Speaker, you know some things the Speaker says, some things can only happen in Kenya. How can you void if mistransactions 1,600 times and pretend that you're doing a clean job? And then the matter is taken to EACC and other investigating agencies, and somehow a way out is found. Now, Speaker, I come from a county in Kitui where an accountant would just sign off audit reports that they have not prepared and submit them to the Office of the Auditor General. And when mistakes and outright evidence of theft is detected, they simply say, we did not prepare those reports. Somebody else prepared, we were asked to sign, because the person who prepared is not authorized to sign. Mr. Speaker, you know, there is a casualness in handling of county resources that must be stopped. Mr. Speaker, our governors must know, if they don't know, they must know that they don't own the counties in which they serve. That they are actually just stewards of public resources. And that it is expected of them to be vigilant and act responsibly, Mr. Speaker, in the management of those resources. So, Speaker, I say this knowing pretty well that the framers of our Constitution and the concept of devolution, there was, Mr. Speaker, an intention on the part of the framers of the Constitution that, Mr. Speaker, the issue of resources is supposed to be organized in such a way that county governments must not perpetually just rely on disbursements from the national exchequer. That they should look for revenue streams within their counties without necessarily, Mr. Speaker, overburdening the local communities, but to raise sufficient funds to be able to carry out basic functions. But, Mr. Speaker, the concern that I have, and I'm very sure it is the concern of a lot of other senators here, is that instead of using own source revenue streams, Mr. Speaker, to enrich county revenue, to carry out basic county functions, a lot of these governments, Mr. Speaker, are using own source revenue streams as avenues for self-enrichment. Mr. Speaker, I come from a rain deficit region, an arid and semi-arid area, Mr. Speaker. A region that we don't grow coffee or tea or any other non-cash crop. But, Mr. Speaker, I come from a region that is rich in other resources that bring revenue to a county. We have the best river sand from the region where I come from. So, Speaker, I would dare say, though I don't have the facts, but I do dare say, that perhaps a big percentage of the construction that takes place in the Nairobi City County, the river sand used, comes from Ukambani. And, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't come cheap. It is expensive. But, Mr. Speaker, governors have used river sand harvesting as a way of enriching themselves and their cronies at the expense of the communities around which the sand is harvested, at the expense, Mr. Speaker, of the county revenues of Kitui and the region. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, that as the Bible says, the time has come and now is, Mr. Speaker. I want to say, as the Senator of Kitui County, I think that time has come. That we will no longer sit back, Mr. Speaker, and watch our resources being plundered for self-enrichment. We will not sit back, Mr. Speaker, and watch as our riverbeds, Mr. Speaker, are being turned into barren bedrocks, Mr. Speaker. We shall not watch, Mr. Speaker, and see as people neighboring rivers where the sand is being harvested are impoverished day in, day out, and some people, a few people, Mr. Speaker, are just lining their pockets. Mr. Speaker, this must stop. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of charcoal burning. Mr. Speaker, when I was growing up, we used to have significantly almost sufficient forest cover in the mountains and the hills around Kitui. Today, Mr. Speaker, much of that forest cover has been cut down completely, Mr. Speaker, and people are burning charcoal and selling to urban centers. We are precipitating the process of turning our region into a desert. And the people that do this, they do it, Mr. Speaker, with their interests, purely with their interests at heart, without caring a thing about the present and future generations' ability to benefit from those resources. The Speaker, as we send money to counties, for them to be able to carry out functions under devolution, this House must also expect, Mr. Speaker, that the on-sales revenue generated by counties also becomes part of the resources that are used to enrich and better the lives of the people in those counties. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, governors must also become a little bit more innovative. Mr. Speaker, it is true and it is not right that every so often there are delays in the disbursements of money from the exchequer to counties. But Mr. Speaker, the other truth of the matter is that eventually, this money is disbursed to counties. And this money is disbursed into banks, commercial banks. When these commercial banks receive money for counties, Mr. Speaker, these monies are used by commercial banks, Mr. Speaker, to do some lending. Mr. Speaker, governors must also be a little bit more innovative and ensure that they get into agreements with commercial banks operating within their counties, Mr. Speaker, so that they have standing orders that on every 26th or 27th of every month, every member of staff in the counties are paid their dues, whether the money has been credited to the account or not, because eventually that money will come. And these banks, Mr. Speaker, do a lot of business, again, with county monies. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that, yes, the Senate would have wanted to see 400 billion taken to counties, but now, Mr. Speaker, the available amount that the
Give him 1 minute.
Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But the rights were really very systematic in warning you on your timing.
Mr. Speaker, but the trail of thought was also doing other things in me. So let me just conclude by saying that, yes, Mr. Speaker, we would have wanted to see 400 billion going to counties. I see now the committee has agreed on 387 billion as equitable share and another additional 8 billion going into counties, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, because this is a mediated version of the bill, and the report requests us, Mr. Speaker, to support that money to go to counties. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I support.
You know, this screen of mine is funny. It was blank, but now it has a member by the name Otieno Moses, Senator Kajwang. You know, the mood was the mover to reply. That was the mood of the House. But maybe you raise a few minutes to give your comments on it's a very important bill for the counties.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Division of Revenue Bill is the most important financial instrument that this House considers. Every senator, if they are committed to their sense of duty, ought to have a view on the division of revenue, because this is where we are demonstrating to the people that we represent that the money that governors are using in the counties cannot pass to them without going through the Senate. Mr. Speaker, some senators in this House, I think Senator for Bungoma,
has been told that he has nothing to do with the money that goes to Bungoma. It is at this point that we demonstrate that a senator, if the senator does not vote yes or no, that money will not reach Bungoma. And so, Mr. Speaker, even if the mood was for the mover to reply, I do hope that you can have a bit of elasticity so that each senator is able to explain why the amount of money their county governments base their budgets on is going to go down, and why it is likely that some hospitals are not going to have drugs, and why it is likely that some markets won't be built, roads won't be maintained, because of certain decisions that have been made here. It must be put on record, Mr. Speaker, that the first time this matter went into mediation, we were led by the senator for the great county of Meru, and who is today sitting on the chair. We had a conversation with our brothers in the lower house. We had a very scientific approach, and we were able to convince them that the right amount of money that should go to county government should not go below 400 billion. We wanted more, but we were able to convince our brothers to settle on 401 billion. And it was not voodoo. It was scientific. We could account for where every single additional shilling was going into. We were able to demonstrate that there was non-discretionary expenditure, some that was not part of the county integrated development plans over 47 counties. One such was a county aggregation and industrial parks, where each county was required to commit 250 million, and the national government would commit a similar amount. It was not the priority of all the counties. Of course, it is a very good idea, but even good ideas need to be prioritized. We had the community health professionals who had been put in place pursuant to the Primary Healthcare Act, which this House passed while sitting in Turkana. Mr. Speaker, we ended up in a situation where you had more than 100,000 community health promoters, whose salary, half would be paid by the county government and the other half by the national government. That is the most absurd arrangement I've ever seen when it comes to payment of anybody who is working for the public. Because at times, the county has paid the 5,000, and the national government has not paid the matching 5,000. And so an old woman who's a community health promoter is unable to service her SACCO loans, is unable to take her children to school because they're still waiting for the national government to send their share of her salary. I mean, Mr. Speaker, even in our households, you can imagine if you had a situation where the gardener, half his salary was to be paid by the man and half to be paid by the wife. I am sure the wife would always pay, the man would never pay. And that is the situation our community health promoters are going through, that the county governments are paying the 5,000, but there are significant delays, and that affects delivery. As we speak right now, Mr. Speaker, the governor of Homa Bay is at a dispensary called Nyakiao Health Center. Nyakiao Health Center happens to be in my village of Bath. We visited that dispensary 3 days ago, and she committed to come back today, and as we speak, she's there to launch the facility. The facility has only one nurse and one other permanent employee. The rest of the services are rendered by the community health promoters. Mr. Speaker, right now, we are enrolling people into the new Universal Health Coverage Scheme, the Social Health Insurance Fund. And one significant thing that happens when people come to these facilities is that when they are enrolling into SHA, there's a means-based testing, and this is being driven and being run by our community health promoters. How do we expect these people to be motivated, to be highly driven, if here at the Senate and at the National Assembly level, we are not granting additional money or sufficient money to be able to pay for their packs? And that is why this mediated report, Mr. Speaker, I disagree with it. You know, when you approach courts of law and when you approach instruments of justice, there is always one of two outcomes. If you go to court, you either win or you lose. At the end of the day, when you lose, you might have your reservations, but you leave that court feeling that justice has been served, even though you lost. When our mediators went into that session, I do not know how the conversations went, but Mr. Speaker,
In the past mediation, which you and I were part of, we were able to demonstrate why 400 billion was sufficient. I do not know what other information that came in that was new that convinced them. Perhaps it is this new English that is being bandied around called fiscal deficit. But, Mr. Speaker, the law had envisaged that where there is a fiscal deficit, that would be bridged by the national government. Because the national government has got the means and instruments to go to the markets, to get additional financing, to able to cater for any deficit that there could be in public spending. The national government issues treasury bills, bonds. The national government goes for concessional and unconcessional loan. The national government, when the president is in the US, the CS Treasury takes a visit to Pennsylvania Street, to IMF and World Bank, and is able to negotiate on behalf of the people of Kenya for additional financing. County governments do not have that ability. And that is why the principle, the constitutional principle of shielding counties from these drops in fiscal deficit was put there. I do not know why we have decided to throw that principle out of the window. Mr. Speaker, even though today we are voting to give counties 387 billion, or it has been proposed to give them 387 billion, the basis of division is also the financial statements of the financial year 2021-2022, if I'm not wrong. Mr. Speaker, revenue should be divided on the basis of the most recent and the most realistic revenue forecasts. I am happy with a decision that was rendered by Justice Jairus Nga early in October. And Mr. Speaker, this matter, I will be bringing it to the floor of the House. Justice Jairus Nga made a ruling recently, and he said that constitutional timelines must be adhered to without exception. Justice Jairus Nga made reference to Article 2294 that requires the Auditor General to bring an audit report to Parliament within 6 months of the closure of a financial year. Justice Nga said that timeline is mandatory, it is cast in stone, and the Auditor General must bring reports to Parliament before the 31st of December of every financial year. Justice Nga went ahead and spoke to Article 2298 of the Constitution. Article 2298 requires Parliament, upon receipt of the report of the Auditor General, to debate, consider, and take appropriate action on that report within 3 months. Justice Nga said that timeline is clearly spelled out in the Constitution. It is mandatory. It is not a suggestion. The consequence, Mr. Speaker, is that any report that is tabled before this House past 31st of December is null and void. Any report by a committee or any debate by the Senate on a matter to do with the audit reports that occurs after the expiry of 3 months is null and void. Mr. Speaker, the genesis of the matter was that the County Assembly of Nairobi indicted several officers for stealing and looting the Alcoholic Drinks Fund. For almost 3 years, they did not prepare financial statements. And as a result, the Auditor General was not able to prepare her report on time. When the Assembly eventually got to consider the report, the Assembly made recommendations that those persons be investigated and be prosecuted for causing serious financial loss to the residents of Nairobi. Those officers of the county went to court, and in court, arguments were made, and the eventual decision was that the County Assembly of Nairobi acted outside the constitutional timelines, and therefore their report was null and void. And that the Auditor General also tabled that report outside the constitutional timelines, and therefore that audit report was null and void. Mr. Speaker, you can imagine the chaos that that decision is going to render. Even us, Senator Sotsi, in my Committee of Public Accounts Committee, we are dealing with reports outside the 3-month period. The majority leader is always tabling an audit report before this House, and many of those audit reports are tabled outside the 6-month period. We must now go back and ask ourselves how we are going to fulfill those timelines. In as much as I complain, there is only one positive thing about it. Division of revenue in the subsequent year must then be based on the most recent financial statements or on the most recent revenue statements. We will no longer be saying that because the National Assembly only adopted the 2021 revenue statement, that's a basis. It will now have to be on the basis of the revenues as audited in the financial year 2023-2024. And if we use that, then automatically counties are going to get more money way above the 387 billion. That's a positive thing about that ruling, that the pot is going to be bigger, it's going to be more recent, it's going to be more up to date, and 15% out of that pot definitely will exceed this amount. So even if we are going to agree with the mediation committee on the 387 billion, if we are going to go by Justice Nga's ruling, then the next division of revenue, counties will be entitled to much more, and there'll be no stories of fiscal deficit. But there are practical complications in implementing that decision. What do you do with 10 years of audit reports that have been brought to this house outside time? What do you do with 10 years and hundreds of reports coming from our committees that have come here outside time? Mr. Speaker, we made a resolution as a committee that the Senate needs to seek a review of that decision because the window for appeal has closed. So what Justice Jaras Nga declared, we must find ways. And as chair of the liaison committee, you must now start asking yourself how the two committees of accountability will be able to consider all the reports within 3 months, especially when you consider that the Auditor General brings the reports on 31st of December when you're on recess, and then the 3 months start counting from that 31st of December. Mr. Speaker, we must start thinking of the practical implications of that. So even if we are going to give the counties 387, which is more or less what they got in the other financial year, it has not taken into account the inflationary aspect. Mr. Speaker, I want to give the counties hope that if we strictly adhere to the Article 229, 4 and 8, and the other various provisions of the Public Audit Act, we'll be presenting more money to counties in the future. Mr. Speaker, we have assumed that wages in county governments should be 35% and above. And the question is, what is the authority behind that? Mr. Speaker, the IMF did a study that indicates that in the most efficient municipalities and urban areas and cities, the proportion that goes to wages is 7%. And I'll be very happy to share with senators that report of the IMF. The global standard, the gold standard, when it comes to human resource and wages is 7%. We have institutionalized 35%, which is 5 times the gold standard. And in many cases, counties are at 60%. Now that counties are receiving less money, because that is a reality, even if it's cent for cent what they received last year, what they got last year compared to this year is not the same because the value, because of inflation and other factors. So in reality, counties are getting less money. We want to encourage county governments to stop this issue of hiring people who are eventually going to be your agents, who are going to be your political campaigners in the next election, that county governments must finalize that process of rationalization of the workforce so that we can release more resources to go into development. County governments must also cut down on wastage. There's a lot of wastage in counties, Mr. Speaker. As a chair of an oversight committee, it is my view that 20% of what goes to counties is wasted. Some of it wasted not in terms of theft, but wasted in terms of redundant things and activities that do not add any value to the lives of our people. Mr. Speaker, you have seen small things that translate into big things, like a small leak in a boat that can capsize it. The grandeur, the podiums, the entourage, the protocol around some of our governors, if you are going to put it all together, Mr. Speaker, it will translate into billions of shillings. What if we just became servant leaders and dropped the showbiz and dropped some of those protocol things that incur unnecessary additional resources? County governments would be able to redirect more to much more useful processes. Mr. Speaker, because we sent out our team to mediate, I will need to be convinced that this is the best outcome that we could get. Mr. Speaker, because my county of Homa Bay is bound to lose out on what had originally been promised, the county had already done a budget, and now they have to do a supplementary budget even before the first budget has been implemented. Mr. Speaker, I am generally against this decision of the mediation committee. Mr. Speaker, I will need to be convinced further, and I'm just giving notice that I do not agree with the spirit of this report. I think that the Senate got the short end of the stick, because we must always look out for the interests of counties and their governments, and it was my view that 400 billion was the irreducible minimum which county governments ought to get. But the silver lining is that Justice Jairus Ngaah is the disruptor. We can blame him for giving a ruling that sounds impractical, but he has disrupted our processes. We must now make sure that within 3 months, the National Assembly has audited and has considered the revenue reports so that we can share with counties the most recent revenues as collected by the National Treasury and the other agencies without hiding behind fiscal deficit. Mr. Speaker, I disagree with this report.
Thank you, Senator. I have Senator Sotsi, I have Senator Koiti, who are still queuing to speak to this particular bill. Senator Okoiti Omtata.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for the opportunity to address the House. I stand to oppose the decision to reduce the amount of money going to the counties from 400 billion shillings. Counties, Mr. Speaker, are struggling. They carry a lot of work that they do. And even as we speak right now, a lot of devolved functions don't have the resources to be implemented or to be carried out. Money has remained in the national government, and yet resources have been devolved. On that premise alone, I would not be willing to touch whatever it is that has been allocated to the counties, and especially given that even the audits that are forming the basis of the allocation are dated. They are so many years behind time. So we are not even being realistic in the way we are going. Number two, I'm yet to see a formula by which DORA can be revised. And as Senator Kajwang has just observed, that a reduction to the amount of money going to counties is going to cause a difficult situation on the ground. Counties have passed budgets based on the allocations they were given, and now we want counties to go back and supplement those budgets. But even when supplementing the budgets, they have an obligation to be faithful to the law, whereby they can only supplement the budgets by not more than 10% per item. So we're inviting counties to be in a situation whereby they may have to break the law. As regards the decision of Justice Ngaah, which I allowed, the 3 months within which the reports of the Auditor General should be approved by Parliament are basically cast in stone unless we amend the Constitution. And I think it's time we try to have fidelity to the Constitution so that things can work like clockwork. Because this business of saying that the Constitution is being implemented piecemeal or haphazardly is the reason why this Constitution looks a bit difficult to implement. If we were faithful to the Constitution and implemented it 100%, we'd find ourselves in a situation whereby it has a working mechanism whereby none of its parts is a burden to the other. But even if you come to a situation whereby it's not properly implemented, it's like having a very, very powerful machine. Even a 2,000 monster machine. But the wheels are deflated. That machine cannot work. However hard the engine roars, it cannot work. So let us implement this Constitution fully. And I personally allowed Justice Nga for the ruling he made. It's upon us to pull up our socks. We can apply for some review to institute some structural interdicts whereby the court can maybe give us some dispensation for some time within which we can catch up. But we must focus on dealing with these audits and make sure that the audits are looked at by Parliament within time so that county governments can get their rightful share of the equitable fund. Mr. Speaker, the issues, there have been arguments that our county officials, the governors, the speakers, the clerks, members of national assemblies, the AECs, and what have you, are misappropriating funds and therefore should not be funded. Let us not mix two things. There's law enforcement. Where they misappropriate funds, Article 226, Clause 5 of the Constitution is very clear that anybody who misuses public funds or under whose care public funds are lost is liable whether they are in office or out of office. Let that be implemented, and let us not get this argument that is usually thrown up that counties are abusing the money they get. Yes, they are abusing the money they get, and the law must take its course. And that's a challenge to our law enforcement, the EACC, the DCI, the judiciary, and others. Let them step up to the plate and make sure that rogue governors, rogue speakers, and any rogue county official is held accountable for the money that the counties lose. And also going forward, Mr. Speaker, in terms of public funds utilized by counties, I think that accounting officers should be appearing before the committees of Parliament, not just the governor. And the Auditor General should be ensuring that these accounting officers present their accounts by 30th of September. By end of September, they present their accounts to the Auditor General, and then by 30th of October, the CECs of Finance present their statements also to their global statements to the Auditor General. Generally, you'll find that most audit reports refer to the global report of the CEC Finance and hardly refer to any reports that were delivered by the various accounting officers of the various entities in the county governments. So maybe we should get to a point whereby it's not the governors that we put to task, only governors. We should also put to task these accounting officers to explain how they utilize public funds, so that this blame game that goes on that counties are dysfunctional and what have you do not come up. And that way, maybe the hearings before PIC and the PAC will be able to trace the money to the real people who signed off the checks, other than the person who has political responsibility, being the governor. So I would really plead that as we grill the governors, we should also be able to grill the accounting officers of the various county departments to account for how money is utilized and used. That way we shall be able to go deeper into the counties and demand accountability for cash from each department, and not just waiting for the political responsibility of the governor. Mr. Speaker, I really beg this House to reject this report so that we can go back to the position whereby we had already passed the DORA, and if there is to be any adjustments, the adjustment should come from the budget of the national government, not the budget of county governments, because it is the national government that is holding a lot of money that belongs to counties, like in agriculture. A lot of money is still being held in Nairobi. It has not followed devolved functions, and farmers are not benefiting from the promise of devolution that they would benefit from had the national government devolved the funds that go with the functions. We are having the same with the health sector. The national government continues to hang on to vital services or vital funds that should be providing services at the county level. And so it's really unacceptable that with the national government already holding money belonging to counties, we again want to say that the deficit that has occurred should be shared equally between the counties, or should be shared in some measure between the counties and the national government. I urge this House, and I plead with my fellow members, to reject this mediation report so that the little the counties were getting is not messed up with. Because in some counties, some counties that are even smaller than my own Busia, allocations are very small. And then we are going again to reduce them. I plead with this House, my fellow senators, that we circle our wagons, close ranks, be bipartisan in approach, and shoot down this report, and go back to the position whereby the money that was allocated to the counties is not interfered with. The money is so little, given what the counties need to do. And I reiterate, if there are governors who are messing up with that money, it's not the reason why the money should not be given to county governments. In your own house, for those who still have babies, if you have a maid, and the maid is eating Cerelac that is meant for your child, you don't stop buying Cerelac because the maid eats Cerelac. You deal with the maid. You fire the maid. You don't stop buying Cerelac for your baby because the maid eats Cerelac. So if governors are messing up with the county funds, if county assemblies are messing up with the county funds, let law enforcement do its duty. Let law enforcement intervene and deal with these rogues. But the money that this House allocates for the people on the ground in our counties must remain sacrosanct. It must not be touched, because that is where the rubber meets the road. The national government has a lot of corners where it can get money, where it can make haircuts, and be able to still balance its budget. The county governments, first of all, the money that are going to the county governments, the way it is handled by this House, we don't have cases of budgeted corruption in the DORA. There's no budgeted corruption there. The money is really worked out meticulously, and is meticulously tied to the needs of counties, almost as a way you prescribe rare medicine for a rare disease. So I really plead with this House that we reject this report, and we make sure that what was allocated to the counties, because it was not based on the current finance the current finances of government, it was based on some couple of years back, is not interfered with, and the national government looks for haircuts in other sections, and especially that money that you have refused to devolve. It can look at that and see, because the counties are doing the functions, it can make cuts without crippling its operations. With those few remarks, I ask the majority leader to lead us in rejecting this negotiated position so that we can fly the flag of devolution high and be able to have some chance at realizing the objectives of devolution. With those few remarks, yes.
Senator Okoiti, are you done?
No, there's a point of order I was raised, so I'm just about to wind
The Speaker has not allowed Senator Ojwang to, but what is your point of order, Senator Kajwang?
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for Senator Mtata to direct the leader of majority to take certain actions and make certain decisions? Yet, just this afternoon, he has launched his exploratory committee to be the next president of Kenya. He could just wait to be the president, and then he gives the county more money. So why would he want Senator Cheriot to go and do the right things that will make his president popular and deny him votes? So is it in order for him to shoot himself in the foot on the floor of the House? Or is he taking Kenyans for a ride with his presidential ambitions, Mr. Speaker?
I'm very sure you listened to Senator Okoiti, and as he was just about to close, he made reference to those few remarks. Yet he's been on the floor for more than 25 minutes plus or so. I'm sure even the extent of his directive to the majority leader probably would also be one of those jokes that as a leader, he does it in form of the normal banter. But Senator Okoiti, please conclude so that other members are allowed to speak.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is true that I want to be President of the Republic of Kenya. And when I'm President of the Republic of Kenya, things like this will not happen because I will have separated the Treasury from the Ministry of Finance, and the Treasury will be run professionally. And we shall enter an era of balanced budgets. There will be no deficits. With those few remarks, I oppose this bill, this report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator Omtata. Senator Osotsi, Godfrey Atieno, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to also comment on this very important bill, the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill 2024 and the Mediation Committee report. Mr. Speaker, just like my two colleagues who have spoken before me, I, from the onset, declare that I am going to oppose this report. Because, Mr. Speaker, I'm in this House because of Article 96 of the Constitution, which is to protect counties and their government. And, Mr. Speaker, we will be setting a wrong precedent as a House, that we pass DORA, and that is one of the major constitutional powers that we have as a Senate. We pass a DORA, and then it is brought back to us to adjust the figures downwards, and we easily agree to that. That, Mr. Speaker, it is not something that we should entertain as a Senate. We are here to protect devolution, and by all ways, Mr. Speaker, this decision to reduce the shareable revenue from 400 billion that we had passed to now 387 billion. It is going to be unprecedented, and it will make those enemies of Senate who have been saying Senate has no space in this country to have a case, Mr. Speaker, to have a justification. I am opposed to that. And Mr. Speaker, I listened to the President speak the other day. And in his speech, which we are debated today, one fundamental thing that he said that there has been a rise in revenue levels. He said that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if there has been a rise in national revenues, why are we being told a different story here? We are being told that we have a revenue shortfall. So if there is a rise, which has been communicated to this House by the head of state and is in our record, why would this House go for a lower figure when there is a rise in revenues? Mr. Speaker, because of that contradiction, that in this report they are talking of a shortfall, but the head of state, who is in charge of government, is talking about a rise in revenue. Because of that contradiction, Mr. Speaker, I will not support this report. I will reject it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly has not reduced the allocation to CDF. They have not touched CDF. Why is it that they are agreeing to lower the figure for counties and CDF remains untouched? We are going to look so bad before our own people as senators that the members of the National Assembly have their way on CDF, but senators, we don't have our way. So what is our role as a Senate? So, Mr. Speaker, again on that note, I will reject this report. Mr. Speaker, the DORA 2024, under Section 5, it says very clearly that in case of a revenue shortfall, it shall be borne by the national government. Similarly, in case of excess revenue collection, it shall accrue to the national government and may be used to reduce the deficit or defray public debt. Mr. Speaker, because of this reason, I will reject this report. Because if the revenues have gone down, that should not be a burden of counties, that should be a burden of the national government to look for ways of managing the shortfall. Mr. Speaker, the additional funding that we sought, that took us to 400 billion shillings, was meant to deal with the additional funding that was required as a result of policies that were introduced by the national government. For example, the housing levy, Mr. Speaker, the enhanced NSSF contribution, the issue of counterpart funding for community health promoters, and also the county aggregation and industrial park. Mr. Speaker, this has enhanced the budgetary requirement of our counties. And because of that, this Senate thought it was wise that we peg the figure at 400 billion. Mr. Speaker, if we go to 387 billion, it means we will not have resolved this problem, Mr. Speaker, of the additional expenditure as a result of national government policies. But, Mr. Speaker, because of that, again, I will reject this report. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I know there is a lot of argument. Every time people want to deny counties money, they say there are governance and accountability problems in our county. Yes, we agree, they are. But we cannot use that as the main justification of denying our counties money. The Constitution is very clear that 15% of the national revenues should go to the counties. So we cannot use that as a basis of denying our counties money. And Mr. Speaker, you know, it is becoming very difficult to manage our counties. I know they have accountability problems, but again, it's becoming very difficult because, one, there is delay in dispersing money from Treasury to CRF, and then when the money gets to CRF, there is another office in this country called the Controller of Budget. Mr. Speaker, counties are spending millions of money traveling from their counties just to come and submit papers seeking approval for requisition, when the Controller of Budget has officers in every county. What are they doing in that county? Mr. Speaker, why has the Controller of Budget not automated that office so that those operations that counties come to do to Nairobi, they can do it online and have the requisitions processed online? But Mr. Speaker, the office of the Controller of Budget is a crime scene. It's a crime scene, Mr. Speaker, where the CEC for Finance, the CEOs for Finance carry millions of money to come and bribe officers at the Controller of Budget so that the requisitions are passed. I have met so many CECs in this town, Mr. Speaker, who are desperate, staying here for days, chasing their requisition. Why can't this office be made efficient? Why can't this office be accountable to the people of Kenya, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Sotsi, there is a point of order from Senator Mandago.
Mandago can inform me.
It's actually a point of order.
But he cannot oppose.
I'm sorry, Senator Otsosi, I'm not informing you, but I'm raising on a point of order on Standing Order 105 on the statement of facts. You know, Honorable Speaker, when the Senator for Vihiga makes sweeping statements that millions of money is being carried to bribe officers from the Controller of Budget, can he table evidence, Honorable Speaker? It is not that all officers in the Controller of Budget are corrupt unless he tables evidence, and if he has that evidence, Honorable Speaker, he knows there are institutions in this country mandated to act on those matters. Honorable Speaker, I think members should not use the floor because of the parliamentary privileges to make sweeping statements on institutions, because those who serve in those institutions have also spent a fortune of their lifetime building a career. Where there is, Otsosi should provide evidence instead of making a wholesale statement that affects a whole institution, which is also a constitutional institution. Thank you, Speaker.
Senator Osotsi, I remind you of the Standing Order number 105 on responsibility for statement of fact. And this is what it says: a senator shall be responsible for the accuracy of any facts that the senator alleges to be true and may be required to substantiate any such facts instantly. With your reference to the millions of money that is being taken around by CECs and CEOs to bribe the officers from the Controller of Budget, that is what the point of order that Mandago is saying. Are you able to substantiate?
Mr. Speaker, Senator Mandago has been a governor, and I think he needs to be honest to himself. I cannot substantiate the obvious, Mr. Speaker. I have heard that from several governors who have complained about that office, that nothing moves until the hands of some people are greased. And Mr. Speaker, on this one, I cannot substantiate. And I cannot withdraw, Mr. Speaker, because this is the obvious. And I'm saying this because my role under Article 96 is to protect counties. And one of the biggest challenges in this country is that office of the control of budget. We either reform that office or we remove that office from the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that it is important that the National Assembly assist this country by making sure that devolution works. There is an attitude in the National Assembly that counties are competing them in terms of development. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that our member colleagues in the National Assembly appreciate the
Senator,
contribution of devolution to this country, Mr. Speaker.
Allow Senator Osotsi to conclude on his remarks, unless it's very critical. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, for protection of the integrity of the House, especially the chair allowed the point of order by the Senator of Washington Gishu, requesting that Senator Osotsi substantiates these allegations. Instead of putting the evidence that Senator Mandago requested for, he has told you he can't substantiate the obvious. So we are waiting for your ruling. You rule
Senator,
so that the House,
Senator
personally, I was waiting for evidence to show that Margaret Nyakiango is corrupt.
He actually has admitted that he cannot substantiate that statement. He did that.
Yes.
He did that.
Then he said he will not withdraw and he will not apologize. So help us.
Senator Osotsi, in your confirmation that you cannot substantiate the allegation that money is shared from among the officers who are oiling the officers of the control of budget, in the absence of any substantiation, you have got no option but to withdraw that particular statement.
Mr. Speaker, on the basis that I cannot be able to produce the hard evidence in this House, I'll withdraw. But I want the House to get it very clearly that there is a problem at that office and we cannot deny it. We know it exists. But one day, someone doing his job will have to get the evidence and the evidence will be produced. Yes, he can inform me.
Senator Kajwang, proceed to inform me.
Mr. Speaker, the issue of people going to the Control of Budgets office with envelopes has been there. But I want to inform Senator Osotsi that there's something called Form C, and it's a real form in that workflow. At the very minimum, the CEC Finance will be carrying Form C. So, Senator Osotsi, it might not be very useful for us to appear as if we are castigating a constitutional office. But I can tell you that that Form C is the one that needs to be eliminated from that process. Because as long as the CEC Finance must carry Form C from Lamu to Nairobi, it then creates wrong impressions of rent seeking. And we must help the control of budget to automate the process, to automate the workflows, to gain visibility into the contents of accounts of county governments so that we get rid of the Form C. And Senator Osotsi, I do not know whether sometimes you do this when you go to withdraw money from your bank account, because counties are going to withdraw money from their account. Sometimes you can be served nicely by the lady teller. She smiles nicely at you. She walks up and down in a manner that entices you, so that once you have withdrawn your money, you can give her a 1,000 shilling in appreciation. I hope that is not the instances you're referring to as millions exchanging hands, but from where I sit, that Form C must be eliminated so that nobody, like Senator Murango, walks around with brown envelopes going to the Control of Budget's office. But, Mr. Speaker, the Control of Budget as a constitutional office bearer, this House should never be seen to be casting aspersions on her conduct.
Senator Osotsi, you are informed. You may proceed to...
Thank you for that information, Senator Kajwa. Indeed, Senator Kajwang has informed me on the aspect of the CECs having to come to Nairobi with that form, because it doesn't make sense, Mr. Speaker, that we have officers of the control of budget who are in our counties, working with our counties. They see those requisitions in the counties, and they still have to, the CECs have still to bring those documents in Nairobi for further processing. It doesn't make sense. Counties, for example, have stayed for almost 1 month waiting for their requisitions to be approved, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't make sense at all. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to say I reject this report.
Senator Mandago Jackson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, from the onset, I rise to support this report by the Committee of Finance, Honorable Speaker, on the division of revenue between counties. Honorable Speaker, as much as we have the responsibility of protecting counties and devolution as a Senate, we must also be realistic, Honorable Speaker, to the circumstances and the happenings within the country. Honorable Speaker, this House had passed, and National Assembly had agreed with us that counties can receive 400 billion shillings for the current financial year, Honorable Speaker. But, Honorable Speaker, the unprecedented events that happened in this country is what has necessitated the change, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the finance bill that had been passed by Parliament had put in revenue-raising measures that would then have ensured that counties would be able to receive what we as a Senate had passed. Honorable Speaker, therefore, the mediation committee from the Senate led by the Chair of Finance, in my view, Honorable Speaker, have done a tremendous job by making sure that the reduction was not what the National Assembly had proposed of 380 billion, but reached a consensus of 387 billion, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, considering the months we have to the end of the financial year and the time we have to collect revenue to be able to fill in the gap that we had envisaged, Honorable Speaker, it's only reasonable and practical that as a Senate, we consider the amount that the mediation committee has come up with to enable our counties to function, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is possible, and I say this from experience as a governor, that it is possible for you to be allocated a very high figure on the paper, but it becomes impossible for that money to be dispersed, Honorable Speaker. And what does that do, Honorable Speaker? Because we have another monster we have been grappling with as a Senate, and even as national government too, and county governments, the aspect of pending bills, Honorable Speaker. Most of the pending bills we have in counties and in national government has been caused by overestimating the revenues and the income we are going to receive. Honorable Speaker, we shall put suppliers of goods and services to counties in jeopardy if, as a Senate, we are going to insist that counties receive 400 billion, which our national revenues may not be able to raise. We shall make counties commit suppliers and contractors to works whom they will not be able to pay, Honorable Speaker. We cannot solve a problem by creating another problem, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, therefore, I want to persuade my colleagues, Honorable Senators, that indeed we have a mandate to protect devolution, and that protection of devolution includes making sure that we are realistic, that the suppliers and contractors in the counties will be paid by voting in revenues that will be accessed and that will be available, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it should not be lost on us that the very, very same people who are against the revenue-raising measures would still also want for increase of share of revenue to counties. Honorable Speaker, as Kenyans, we must begin having a very honest conversation, particularly when it comes to development. We have a choice as Kenyans, and we make a decision and say, let's reduce the taxes that we are paying But then let us also reduce the expectation in terms of development, both from county governments and from national government. And we therefore have to live within the revenues that we shall be able to raise, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of release of funds, and we appreciate that there has been a delay in disbursement to counties, Honorable Speaker, and I want to agree with Senator Okia Omtata, Honorable Speaker, that the National Treasury, the current National Treasury as set, behaves and acts as an agent of national government. National Treasury, Honorable Speaker, in fact, I think as a House, we should begin considering amendments to the PFM Act and make the National Treasury independent treasury, and we have an independent Ministry of Finance for national government, Honorable Speaker, so that the National Treasury can then serve the two levels of government fairly, equitably, and in a manner that promotes the two levels of government growth. Honorable Speaker, as it is, when it comes to disbursement of funds, priority is being given by National Treasury to national government, Honorable Speaker. I say this from experience. You would find salaries for county government staff delaying, while their counterparts in national government receive their salaries earlier than even 30th of every month, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, National Treasury should realize that there are a National Treasury that serves both two levels of government, and they must make sure they are fair in their processes. Honorable Speaker, the other problem that comes with disbursement of funds is the issue of this IFMI system, that the officers in the National Treasury has made it almost impossible for that. I don't know whether the system is old, it needs to be re-engineered or needs to be done away with and we get another system. The downtime of that system, especially when it comes towards the end of the financial year, Honorable Speaker, has always been almost 50–60% in making it difficult for counties to be able to pay their suppliers, their contractors on time because of the downtime that is experienced through IFMIS. But Honorable Speaker, the downtime of IFMIS sometimes has been used by National Treasury actually to manage disbursement to counties. Honorable Speaker, we don't want the culture that we have seen in the past in National Treasury. The funds to counties must be disbursed on time. We don't want the National Treasury that makes sure every 30th of June of every year, they begin publishing in the daily newspapers the amounts of money available in the county revenue accounts, money that was sent a day or 3 days to the end of the financial year, and expecting counties to expend those funds within the 3 days, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, as a Senate, we should amend the Public Finance Management Act to make sure that the National Treasury is independent and makes it possible for counties to access money on time. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of the Office of the Controller of Budget, I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Kajwang, that the inefficiencies that we have in the Controller of Budget's office is a system issue, is a process issue, and we need to have a conversation with the Controller of Budget on automation of the processes. And Honorable Speaker, counties should then be able to use the automated processes to requisition funds and eliminate the aspect of traveling. Honorable Speaker, the traveling to the Controller of Budget is not limited to the requirement by the Controller of Budget. Sometimes counties and officers within the Department of Treasury in counties, Honorable Speaker, use it as an opportunity to get a chance to travel out, Honorable Speaker. And you know the motivation of traveling to Nairobi, Honorable Speaker, is very high. This being the capital city of the Republic of Kenya, and you know also the allowances are fairly good. We are happy ourselves as a county of Uasin Gishu that now Eldoret is a city, so that Otsotsi and Vihiga County can take their conferences to Eldoret, Honorable Speaker, and also boost tourism, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, the problem of traveling is not really necessarily just limited to the issue of the Controller of Office, but we must also, as a Senate, interrogate the travel by counties, whether really they are related. Officers could be traveling in the excuse of going to the Controller of Budget, yet they have actually no issues to transact at the Controller of Budget's office. So I therefore, Honorable Speaker, want to say I support and I want to persuade my colleagues that we support this report by the mediation committee led by our chair of finance here at the Senate, so that our counties can be able to access funds. Honorable Speaker, we do appreciate that we have very little time. If counties have to achieve the targets they have set for this financial year, then the sooner we clear this to make the funds available to them, the better. But we must also say that our counties have not been performing as expected, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the functions that are devolved and what has been done for the first financial year, second financial year, there's a big challenge. I'll tell you, Honorable Speaker, in my own county, Honorable Speaker, for the last 2 financial years, there is no single ECD classroom that has been constructed, and funds have always been voted for construction of ECDs. We therefore want to urge our governors to be hands-on in monitoring the implementation of the county programs and make sure that the funds that we allocate are Senate and citizens of the counties, Honorable Speaker. With that, I beg to support this report, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Mandago. Senator Margaret Kamar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. May I start by supporting the report? I support the report dominantly because we don't want to give our governors any excuses. Our governors have been giving us excuses. We don't have money, so we have not paid this and that. And yet we know that the process of development in a county is such that you must have an annual plan. And if governors truly have annual plans, they only plan for the money that they have. And we should not be having a lot of pending bills. So the pending bills have been one excuse, and we don't want to be part of that excuse. So I would support that we get the money released so that the governors can move on and get things going. But all the same, Mr. Speaker, I still think that we have not given counties enough money up to now from the inception of devolution, because it is a fact that we have functions in Schedule 4 of the Constitution, and those functions are different for the national government and the county government. And it's extremely important that we start ensuring that money follows functions. It is therefore very important that when we are dividing the money, we actually don't just divide arbitrarily, but we make sure that the functions are funded according to what we are right now. In fact, if we did that, Mr. Speaker, we may not need new money. All we need to do is to shrink the Ministry of Agriculture accordingly, because there are people who have not been devolved even when agriculture was devolved. The same thing with the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health was devolved dominantly, but the personnel we have in Afia House are still intact. So we need to ask ourselves, what is it we devolved, and then we follow it with the money. And if we did that, that may not even require new money. It may just require that we relocate the money to where the function has gone. Mr. Speaker, that is very important because for you to be able to account for any function, you must have the right budget to cover the same function. So for that, I really would insist to this House that for the future, we need to sit early, we need to discuss early, and we need to make sure that we do that, we make money follow functions. Mr. Speaker, this House is a house of oversight, and we must make sure that we do what is required of us. Mr. Speaker, I would like to go to the other side again and thank His Excellency, the President, for the speech that he made on Thursday, because it touches also on what we are doing in Dora. In the funding that, in the speech of the President, he did locate money where he was emphasizing the development of the government. And it is very important, again, that we read through so that we spend according to what we think we are going to fulfill. Mr. Speaker, in his speech, the President touched on university funding, and I want to touch on that because I came from there before I joined politics. And the current university funding model is a model that, if it is understood by all, it's a very good model. The model that we have been given is a unit cost model, that the cost of doing law is different from the cost of doing medicine. And it's very important that we recognize that. For many years, the universities have been given a global fund according to the number of students that they have. When that is done, it is very difficult even for the universities to attract students from outside. So most universities have shied away from attracting students from outside this nation because the fee they would give would be completely different from the fee that we have. And if you look at the East African community privileges, it is very clear that students in the East African community partner states are supposed to pay their local fees. Now, in Kenya, if you have a student paying local fees in medicine, you will have a very cheap program for a very expensive program. So they'll pay very little, and yet the program is very expensive. So it is very important that the right costing is done for the university programs, and I think that's exactly what this model is doing. Once the costing has been done, then the government will give its own scholarships and grants, as well as any support that they would like to give in terms of scholarships to students. That is completely a different story altogether. It does not mean that if you have the right costing for a program that you'll pay the same. You will not have to pay that if the government is paying for you. And that's exactly what this model is doing. What has never been done is to explain this model. It would have been very good to have public participation on the new funding model so that it's exposed to everybody. I sit in the Committee of Education, and even as a Committee of Education, we are having problems trying to understand exactly how the model was until we got the minister to come and explain to us. So that model, I would like to support the president's approach. I support so many other things that he gave in his speech. The other one that I want to mention, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of a university called Moi University. Moi University is the second university in this country. And the problems and the challenges of Moi University are not being analyzed properly. Moi University gave birth to 12 universities. And in giving birth to 12 universities, it spent its own internal resources. Mr. Speaker, it will surprise you that the mother university, called University of Nairobi, refused to mother small universities. They had one or two, maybe Kenya Science and Technical University only, because they knew the implication financially. Moi University vice chancellors have been extremely generous. And in their generosity, they even took loans for universities. And in fact, we are trying to see in our committee if we can table those figures, because it is important for the country to know that it has nothing to do with mismanagement. It has to do with generosity of the vice chancellors. So the vice chancellors of Moi University gave birth. They started by giving birth to Maseno University, Masinde Muliro University, Kisii University, Narok University, Karatina University, Mamangina University, all sorts everywhere, top of every corner of this country, including Garissa, which was the baby that they had. And in all those universities, they actually released money to their own investment. It is very important that this analysis is done properly so that Moi University is paid or refunded the money that they spend in the baby universities. Because in their generosity, they have brought everything to a standstill. In their generosity, members of staff are suffering today because their statutories are not being paid, their loans are not being paid, out of generosity of a vice chancellor who did not do the maths that the other universities have done. If you look at the universities that were nursed by KU, there may be 3. The universities that were nursed by Jomo Kenyatta, there may be also about 3. But talk of one more university that nursed 12 universities. There is no way they would have survived. This was a time bomb. It has now arrived. It is at our footstep, it's at the doorstep now, and it has to be sorted out. So even as we are looking at the unit costs of universities, we also need to look at the things that have made the universities not to perform the way they are supposed to perform. Mr. Speaker?
Senator,
Yes.
Professor Kamara, you...
My student of Moi University, I will take.
Very well. Senator Kajwang, please proceed to inform
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Professor Kamar, because she is my teacher, my senior. And I wanted to inform Professor Kamar, who, for the record, when I was at Moi University, she was a very, very highly regarded administrator at Chepkwelel campus. And Mr. Speaker, what I wanted to inform Senator Kamar, when the president came here last week, he said that the challenges at Moi University are governance problems, and that the problems at Moi University are unique. They might not be similar to the problems of University of Nairobi or the funding model as applied to the other institutions, which means that the problem is localized to the council, because it is the university council that has the responsibility of making certain decisions of financial administrative nature. Mr. Speaker, when I was at Moi University, I was a Secretary General, so I would represent the students in the Senate, and I would represent the students in the University Council. And the council that has made the decisions that Senator Kamar has referred to, which she refers to as generosity, and I thought she would refer to it as irresponsibility, still seems to be in the office, in office, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I wanted to inform you that that university, which you worked so hard for, in an era where tribalism was not a factor, the Vice Chancellor, our time, was Professor Rafael Munavu, a man from Ukambani. We had Professor Ole Karei, a man from Narok. We had my own faculty, Professor Kefa Sodini, a man from Western. At the biggest school of social studies, we had Professor Akonga. Mr. Speaker, it was never about the tribe. You didn't have to be one of the boys to be an administrator or to be a dean, to be a head of a department. So I just wanted to inform Professor Kamar that there seems to have been something that went wrong after you left Moi University, that instead of it becoming the bastion for intellectual discourse, it became the bastion for tribal loyalties. And also, Professor Kamar, be informed that a great university decided to buy donkeys to replace tractors. A university that is supposed to train engineers, to train lawyers, to train people who are supposed to run this nation, makes the decision that these tractors are too expensive, let us buy donkeys. So, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to inform Professor Kamar of the things that have happened since the days when her and her team ensured that Moi University was a university of choice, and before Governor Mandago became the governor of Uasin Gishu.
Professor Kamar, you've been informed. Kindly proceed to
Thank
make
you.
your contribution so that
I just wanted to mention that the information is a little bit confusing from my student. It is confusing because it is true that there are governance issues, not just in Moi University, but in all universities in Kenya as we are talking. I just also wanted to mention...
Senator Professor Kamar, Senator Mandago would like to inform you further.
Okay.
Senator Wambua as well. Are you ready to be informed? Very well, Senator Mandago.
Honorable Speaker, I wanted to inform Professor Kamar that she's being misinformed by Senator Kajwang. To the extent that, Honorable Speaker, the citation of various vice chancellors, past vice chancellors from Moi University, Senator Kajwang is trying to drive a certain narrative that I've said in this house. I'll be very firm. What Senator Kajwang has conveniently done is to hide the fact that since 2003, Moi University was systematically starved of funds, to the extent that this year, as we sit here, Honorable Speaker, Moi University was just allocated a paltry 5,000 students at the expense of a capacity of 14,000. So Senator Kamar, my learned professor, don't be misinformed by your student who has chosen to take leave.
Senator Wambua had equally requested that he informs you. Proceed, Senator Wambua.
Mr. Speaker, I would rather you just allow the professor and our students to engage on this matter and leave alone other people who are pretenders to the throne, Mr. Speaker. But I respect Senator Madago. Only that he is also trying to misinform my teacher. Mr. Speaker, I want to inform my teacher, Professor Kamar, that she should go back in memory lane and remember where we left Moi University. And Moi University then being called the fountain of knowledge. And that, Mr. Speaker, when we went to Moi University and when she was my teacher at the Moi University, it was never an issue who the Vice Chancellor of Moi University would be, where they come from, or what their qualifications are, for as long as they are qualified to be Vice Chancellors in that university. Mr. Speaker, we were there under Professor Kerr, were there under Professor Carey, Professor Munavu, Everest Tanda, and it was never an issue where these fine Vice Chancellors came from. The Speaker, from the time that conversations around the office of the Vice Chancellor at Moi University began to take a route of negative ethnicity, that university, Mr. Speaker, today is a pale shadow of what it used to be. Mr. Speaker, I submit.
Senator Professor Kamar, I hope you haven't been misinformed or confused by your other students.
My students are even confusing it also further. But I'm going to help them, Mr. Speaker. Because I'm in the Committee of Education, we want to bring some things to make things very clear. Because there are things that are governance issues which exist and we cannot deny in any university. Once upon a time, I was a minister in education. During my time, the President Kibaki started 15 universities. In the 15 universities, Mr. Speaker, the one that was started in Jaramogi Odinga, the tribe was from the village. The one that was started in Kitui, where my other student comes from, also came from there. The one that was started in Karatina, the professor that became the vice chancellor came from there. There was something about having the confidence of the people. I don't know what it was, but always people ran home for interviews. And they ran home for interviews. In fact, Moi University should be congratulated. It is the one that did not have somebody from the neighborhood for a very long time. I think the current vice chancellor is the first one that came from that neighborhood. We started from Salamia, from Odiambo. We went to Kea. One was from South Nyanza, another one from North Nyanza. I call it North Nyanza because it's the opposite of the lake. And Moi University has not had those. So let's not use the tribe, because I know if somebody says I oversaw tribal installations, it actually happened at that time that the people who went back home for interviews, you talk of Masinde Muliro, and the people who go home for interviews are actually from the neighborhood. And we did not mind, so long as the chairman of council was from outside. And these universities came to prominence. But I love my students because they love the university. They would not be talking if they did not love Moi University. So for that, I really appreciate their comments. But as a Committee of Education, we'll be able to get the facts. We'll be able to give you the figures so that we actually start to understand. But I can tell you for a fact that Moi University became a victim of being too generous. If that generosity was part of mismanagement, it was. Because that's exactly what happened. It's spreading all the way to Garissa. In fact, I personally even opposed Garissa. And I said, let Jomo Kenyatta, which is nearer to Garissa, go to Garissa. But at the end of the day, who fought for this? Members of parliament from Garissa were fighting for Moi University to go to Garissa. Because again, Moi University students love the institution. So a member of parliament who was a former member of Moi University staff said, no, I don't want any other university. So we have had these issues, and some of us as parliamentarians have also affected the way the universities run, because we are either fighting for promotion, like in the 15, we had 5 that were actually as a product, as a result of members of parliament fighting to have universities. Nothing was wrong with it because we needed universities. Our students did not have enough space. But we need to really critically look at that. I only say that Moi University was a victim because it spent too much money that was not its own money. And it would be nice to step on that in this house so that all of us get to understand, and then we deal with the mismanagement issues. Mr. Speaker, I support this report. Let's continue to get money to go to where the functions are. Let's increase the amount of money that goes to counties, because the functions are being increased. With those remarks, I support, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Professor Kamar, for your contribution. And now, honorable members, there being no other senator who is desirous of contributing to this particular report, I call upon Senator Mugatana, who is the mover of the bill, of the motion report, to reply.
Mr. Speaker, may I take this opportunity to really sincerely thank honorable senators who made very impassioned contribution to this report. Mr. Speaker, when I moved this report, I said that this is one of the most important constitutional mandate that any senator who is elected from his county knows he must execute. And Mr. Speaker, every one of us, with exception of those who have probably traveled on official duty, was able to put the issues that were captured in that report. Mr. Speaker, I respect the diversity of opinion that was expressed in the debate, and I listened carefully to every senator who spoke to this report. Mr. Speaker, as I reply, I think I'm better informed now than even when I was moving this report. So I really truly thank honorable members and the Council of Governors. I believe the governors are listening. The message is clear. Members of the Senate, they may have diverse opinions, but they were united in one thing: please develop your own source revenue so that going forward, we will not be continually be dependent on the equitable share to survive running the counties. Number 2, members of the Senate have expressed a very strong view that resources within the county, once we have released them from here, will be utilized properly as intended. So that, Mr. Speaker, we will not have money released by the Senate through these bills, and then they go down there and then services are not given to the people. Mr. Speaker, thirdly, members may have had diverse opinions, but they agreed that time has come that money that is allocated from the budget should follow function. And Mr. Speaker, the counties have been given a heavy load of functions, and the national government is not releasing the requisite funds so that our counties may develop. Mr. Speaker, with all this divergent opinion, this House, Mr. Speaker, is a house of reason, is a senior house, is a house that is full of people with a lot of experience in their own professional fields, even in political leadership, in administration. Mr. Speaker, I truly believe that by the time that we will come to bring this matter to a vote, we will have reached a consensus. Maybe those who expressed opinion differently from the report will be persuaded. And we hope that as many of us will come to support. And for me, the reason is that we have had a drop in the expected collections. And I remember very well, Mr. Speaker, which I mentioned, but it is good for me to underscore this point, that, Mr. Speaker, even during the negotiations, during the mediation process, after the cameras were removed, we were given facts and figures by the Treasury, so that the question now moved from there is the wishful and the reality. There is the reality, what can we disburse and what is available. So, Mr. Speaker, and I think the debate here also captured that idea that we need also to be, alive to what the realities, fiscal realities that we live in the country today. So, Mr. Speaker, with those very many remarks, again, I want to say thank you very much. And I still want to say thank you to the leadership that we enjoyed, and Senator Ali Roba. Our team was led by him, and the team from Parliament National Assembly was led by Honorable Dindi Nyoro. So, Mr. Speaker, I still want to urge members to consider supporting this report. The issues they have raised, we can still keep talking. Fortunately, we are not going to vote today. So as I move, I prepare, as I reply, Mr. Speaker, I pray between now and the time we will vote, we shall persuade each other to support this report. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to reply, and I request, pursuant to Standing Order number 66, sub 3, that the putting of the question be deferred to a later date. Mr. Speaker, I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mungatana. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 66, the putting of the question as regards the report is deferred to the next sitting of the House. Clerk, please call the next order.
Order number 9, motion, consideration of the National Assembly amendments to the Cotton Industry Development Bill, Senate Bills number 5 of 2023.
Honorable Senators, I call upon the Chairperson, Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, Senator Murango, to move the motion.
Asante sana Mstahiki Spika. Mstahiki Spika, ningetaka kuomba kwamba mswada kuhusu ustawishaji wa pamba, marekebisho ambayo ilitoka katika Bunge la Taifa, mswada nambari 5 wa mwaka 2023. Yes.
Could you please read out in under as reflected in the order that the National Assembly amendments?
Thank you.
Before you contribute in the language of your comfort.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the National Assembly amendments to the Cotton Bill, Development Bill, Senate number 5 of 2023, be now considered. Mr. Speaker, if you allow, because I'm a member.
Proceed in Kiswahili, Senator Morango.
Asante mstahiki Speaker. Mstahiki Speaker, mswada wa pamba ambao uko mbele yetu ulimaliziwa katika bunge la Seneti na ukaenda katika bunge la kitaifa ili uweze kuzingatiwa baada ya kufanya misururu ya mikutano na uhamasishaji wa umma katika sehemu tofauti tofauti na kamati ya kilimo katika bunge ya Seneti kuleta ripoti katika Seneti. Mstahiki Speaker, ilipoenda kule kuna marekebisho ambayo bunge la kitaifa imeomba iweze kufanywa na ikarudishwa tena katika kamati ya ukulima, uvuvi na uchumi wa uvuvi samawati katika bunge la Seneti, na tukakaa chini tukafalia njuga swala hilo, tukaangalia mambo yote ambayo inafaa kuangaliwa, na mstahiki Speaker, tukakubaliana ya kwamba marekebisho yote ambayo yalitoka katika bunge la kitaifa inafaa kuzingatiwa. Kwa hivyo hakuna senator yote ambaye alikuja kupinga marekebisho ambayo ilitoka katika bunge la kitaifa. Na kwa hivyo mstahiki Speaker, ni kusema ya kwamba report ambayo tulienda na tukaiandika na kuileta katika bunge la Seneti ipo, na hivyo nimesema ndo inasema kwamba tunakubaliana na marekebisho yote ambayo pia iko katika ratiba ya Seneti ambayo tuko nayo siku ya leo. Mstahiki Speaker, huu mswada ni mswada muhimu sana kwa sababu ukizingatia kwamba maeneo ya kiuchumi ambayo inaitwa EPZ ambayo viwanda mingi ambazo zinatengeneza nguo ambayo inatokana na pamba, leo hii ni kusema viwanda vile sasa wananunua nguo, vitambara za nguo kutoka nje, sana sana nchi ya Bangladesh. Mstahiki Speaker, tulienda katika gatuzi la Busia na tukawa na mkutano, na nichukue nafasi hii kumshukuru sana Senator wa Busia Omtata kwa sababu alitupatia nafasi nzuri ya kukaa na kuongea na wanabusia, na serikali imejenga kiwanda mpya ya kuweza kushughulikia pamba na kuitoa nguo. Shida ambayo ilikuweko ni kwamba hakuja kuwa na sheria muhimu ambayo inaratibu venye biashara ya ukuzaji wa pamba na uuzwaji wa pamba unafaa kufanywa, na tukafikiria kwamba ni vizuri mswada ambao uliletwa mbele yetu na Senator Beth Siengo tuweze kuzingatia na kufanya kuwa ni msingi katika ile biashara ya kilimo, ili iwe ni kilimo biashara, sio bora kilimo. Mstahiki Speaker, maeneo yote nchi hii ukizunguka kuanzia Nyanza kwenda magharibi mwa nchi, ukuje upande wa bonde la Ufa, ukuje maeneo ya kati, uende Ukambani na uende mpaka Lamu katika eneo la Pwani, ni kwamba hiyo maeneo yote pamba kwa sababu inastahimili ukame inaweza kuzwa katika sehemu nyingi. Ni kitenga uchumi kizuri kama tutawekesha na kuhakikisha kwamba kuna mtaji wa kukuza pamba, pembejeo zinapatikana, na mstahiki Speaker, kama mbegu ambazo zinaitwa za BT ambayo kilo moja ni zaidi ya shilingi 7,000, lakini ni pamba nzuri sana ikipewa wakulima. Na kwa hivyo tukaonelea kwamba kama wakulima watapewa nafasi na wapewe pembejeo, wataweza kunufaika pakubwa na pamba. Mstahiki Speaker, pamba ni mmea ambao una maana sana kwa sababu ukitoa ile pamba ambayo kwa kimombo inaitwa lint, inaenda kutengeneza nguo. Ukitoa mbegu ya ndani na kuifinya inatokanga mafuta, na ingine ndio wanaita kwa kimombo biodiesel, na hata mafuta ya kutumia katika kupikia. Na ile ambayo inambaki ndio ina keki kutoka kwa pamba.